including the disaster is a major challenge for Colombia's national government. The country's president, Abelardo de la Espriella, was sworn in just days ago. Typhoon Dolphin is churning inland towards central China. People make their way through the flooded streets of Hubei province. It is home to more than 58 million people. Alerts for severe flooding and landslides were issued. About 1,000 kilometers to the north in the capital, Beijing will be getting more rain. It is expected to receive over 1/3 of its annual rainfall in the next 24 hours. That is more than 150 millimeters of rain in a day. Temperature records are being broken in Europe. Another heat wave is now settling over western parts of the continent. Almost 3/4 of England is now in drought. It is one of many countries dealing with prolonged heat and a lack of rain. Around 27 million people are living with water restrictions. It is the 5th heat wave to hang over Britain this year. The dry heat has also fueled wildfires across several countries, including Italy, France, and Spain. There are heightened concerns in Spain about the prolonged heat. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to gather in northern Spain for tomorrow's solar eclipse. More than 100 wildfires are tearing through parts of British Columbia. In BC's Okanagan region, thousands of people have been displaced. Some people want to get back to their communities as soon as they can, but there's a lot of cleaning up to do before that's possible. The CBC's Michelle Allen reports.
Through the smoke, water bombers unload on the Bald Range fire. Crews are working overnight as dry conditions fuel the flames near Summerland. But so much is burning, evacuees are not able to return home.
It's not a time right now to be able to go back to the community. It is not safe at this time.
Graham Statt is the Regional Emergency Operations Center Director. At an update last evening, Summerland officials say they will start triaging requests from people who want to temporarily return to evacuation zones. But if evacuees are allowed in, it will be temporary. Summerland Mayor Doug Holmes says what evacuees find may be difficult to take in.
When we do get back, we need to brace ourselves for what's there or what's not there. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard.
Police say they aren't aware of any new fatalities. Over the weekend, an 80-year-old woman from Meadow Valley died while trying to flee with her family. The Bald Range fire now burns over 15,000 hectares. It's one of multiple wildfires ripping through BC's interior. Over 21,000 people throughout the province are under evacuation orders, including the entirety of Summerland. Michelle Allen, CBC News, Vancouver.
One community is trying to recover. 2 years ago, the Jasper wildfire destroyed 1/3 of the town site, including hundreds of hotel rooms. It was an economic blow. The community depends on tourism. The summer season alone generates 80% of local revenue. As the CBC's Maggie Kirk reports, every visitor and every dollar counts.
So far this summer, we've actually seen really good momentum.
The crowds of tourists are back in Jasper. Tyler Riepel is the CEO of Tourism Jasper, and he says international visitors are returning in high numbers, which is good because...
So international visitors spend anywhere from 3 to 5 times more than what a domestic visitor might spend.
Higher hotel prices are also driving up spending. With fewer rooms available, nightly rates have climbed. Evil Dave's Grill owner Mike Day says it's bringing in customers with a higher disposable income.
So the check average is higher, serving higher end items, nicer bottles of wine.
But with fewer hotels available, that also means less foot traffic, which hurts retail stores and tour operators. Local leaders say a full economic recovery could take up to 10 years. But with hundreds of local beds anticipated to return next summer, Jasper's economy is on an upward trajectory. Maggie Kirk, CBC News, Jasper, Alberta.
South African police say at least 14 people are dead at an illegal mining operation. Several more are injured. It happened about 130 kilometers northwest of Johannesburg. Few other details have been confirmed. Unsanctioned mining has flourished in South Africa. Gangs pay artisanal miners to search for gold and other precious metals in abandoned shafts. In Ukraine's capital, crews work to put out a fire after a Russian ballistic attack in Kyiv. It's one of several cities recovering from overnight missile and drone strikes. At least 9 people are dead. Several others are injured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of using North Korean missiles to carry out the attack. He says it was meant to inflict maximum damage on civilian infrastructure. Zelensky is warning other nations about North Korea's growing involvement in the war and the potential danger it poses to them. Russia's defense ministry confirms it carried out overnight strikes. It says it targeted military-related transport and logistics centers. Federal conservatives are raising concerns of a possible conflict of interest in a military satellite contract. Ottawa announced the $2.6 billion deal with Telesat last week. Prime Minister Mark Carney knows its CEO personally. As CBC's Murray Brewster explains, the project meant to help Canada monitor its far north is prompting questions about transparency.
This is about a matter of trust and transparency.
Conservative defense critic James Bazan, who says the government has some explaining to do about its decision to hand the multi-billion-dollar satellite contract to Telesat.
Was Prime Minister Carney involved in the decision-making process? Did he recuse himself when these discussions were taking place at the cabinet table?
The Prime Minister has a public friendship with the CEO of Telesat, Dan Goldberg. Bazan says the opposition wants to see contract details and the cabinet decision points that led to the Telesat agreement. All of that is covered by cabinet and commercial confidentiality and likely not to be released. One of the last times the opposition fought this kind of battle was 2 years ago, when the Speaker of the House of Commons ruled that Parliament's demand for documents supersedes government secrecy. It was a landmark ruling. The Privy Council office says all of the appropriate conflict of interest screens were in place for the Telesat deal, and Goldberg says Carney played no role in the decision, which was handled by federal officials.
We went through an absolutely rigorous process.
Goldberg says the Arctic Satellite Network will be operational by 2028. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Electric scooters and bikes are becoming more common on Canadian roads. There are concerns about the number of children using them. Some Quebec doctors say stricter regulations are needed. They say they've seen an increase in injuries related to the devices. The CBC's Sarah Levitt reports.
We are seeing a continuous rise in the past few years of the amount of injuries that we're seeing coming into our emergency department.
As trauma coordinator at the Montreal Children's Hospital, Leanne Franzblow says she's seen the gamut of injuries related to kids using electric bikes or scooters.
Most of them lose control, go forwards over the e-scooter, face first or head first into the ground, so they'll breaking thumbs, wrists, facial fractures, head injuries, brain injuries.
Franzblow and her colleagues have written an open letter calling on the Quebec government to increase the age limit for users from 14 to 16. They also want to see helmets be made mandatory.
We're concerned that they don't understand the real scope of what's happening from our perspective.
Quebec's Ministry of Transport says there are no plans to change its regulations. Most provinces have the age limit set at 16. Nova Scotia, though, is changing its rules. Starting in the fall, the age limit to ride the scooters or bikes there will be 14. Fred Tilley is the Public Works Minister for Nova Scotia.
They can go up to 30, 32 kilometers an hour and more. So you start to get into a different level of conveyance than a traditional bicycle or cycle.
In Montreal, Franzblow says there also has to be an awareness of the dangers by both the parents and the children riding the bikes or scooters. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, everyone. How's Tuesday going? I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Tuesday, August 11th show. Welcome to Information Radio. It's your morning show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and YouTube. You love hockey? Well, you must have loved yesterday. If you managed to see the Stanley Cup, it made its way to Winnipeg with Seth Jarvis. We're going to hear more about what that was like. Also this hour on the show, it's different this year, isn't it? Watching wildfires in this country after we had one of the worst years and unprecedented year in our province's history last year. BC is getting hammered. It's been terrifying there. This hour, we're going to hear more from an environmental studies professor about mitigation measures for future fire seasons, so stay tuned for that. And then at 10 to 7 this morning, we will continue talking about the trade negotiations that are ongoing. Mark Carney facing pressure from both sides, the Trump administration wanting concessions. Canadians, though, might not want the government to give in. And we do have at least a statement from the Premier's office. And that would be around U.S. booze, because we haven't had it on the shelves here. So we're wondering, and we've repeatedly asked, what are we going to do if nationally the Prime Minister says that they're going to use this as a chip, for concessions, saying that we're going to put U.S. booze back in the shelves. Well, so far, all the premiers have made those decisions individually. So we will have Premier Wab Kinew on later this week. But today, this hour, we're going to have an interview about that and more. Right now, let's go to Josh Crabb, who's here with other headlines. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Manitoba Hydro says it had to reduce the power output at its Brandon natural gas plant during 3 of the past 10 winter peak usage periods. Hydro officials testified about the shortages at public hearings late last month. Critics say this contradicts previous hydro claims cleaner energy is too unreliable in the cold. The Manitoba Nurses Union is worried about a ransomware attack affecting doors, heating, and air conditioning at Health Sciences Centre. The hospital has said patients are not affected, but MNU says it's concerned because of previous security incidents at HSC. And accessibility mats are back at Winnipeg Beach to allow people with wheeled mobility devices to enjoy their visit. But an advocate for Manitobans living with disabilities says not enough details are available online about when the mats are not laid out. Your next local CBC News is at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
Well, Abby, it's the season of we dress for fall when we get up, and then by the end of the day, we better have layers to take off because it's going to get warm.
Exactly. Another day, just like what we've been seeing the last 2-3 days. Temperatures really reaching mild mid-20s across southern Manitoba, but today we will see more clouds roll in as we get into the afternoon. And if you look up north, it's much cooler than the south. We're just seeing mid-upper teens with a slim chance of afternoon showers in the forecast. Right now in Winnipeg, 16 other fogs. We're tracking shallow fog being reported at the airport at this time. We're looking at temperatures around 9 degrees there. We will notice the cloud cover as it increases through the day, pushing our daytime high to about 25, and then tonight we will cool off to about 14. And across the southern regions, that's what we will see. The sun is going to make its appearance, then gives way to a mix of sun and clouds with highs reaching 21 in the Brandon area, and every other region will be looking at 24, 25s from the Westman to the Interlake region. Up north, it's more about the mixed conditions there. Flin Flon looking at 13, heading to 22, while Churchill still has this morning fog that we've been getting all day, all for the past 3 days or so. That should dissipate as you get into the morning with highs just around 13 degrees. So overall, down south, we get to 25. Up north, we should see about 22, 23. Winnipeg right now, let's just call it 16 degrees, and we warm up to 20. I said cool. We warm up to 25 later.
Soon you'll be saying cool.
Yeah, I know.
You just put that aside for now.
But right now, 15 degrees, 15, 16 at the Fox, and
traffic. I was going to let you breathe for a second because you're doing like 3 jobs.
Traffic, we have major road. I have major road closures that you need to keep in mind today. The Louise Bridge closed both ways. You already know that. Henderson Highway northbound is down to one single lane near that Springfield area, and of course the Pembina northbound ramp to Abeno Jamaica, the westbound is closed. So plan ahead for delays. And also spots we have construction in the city, you should be expecting delays there. And of course the zipper areas, just be nice to all the drivers, okay? You see anything in traffic, give us a call, 788-3093.
Well, up first, we might have our eyes on some different sports stories right now, watching the Sea Bears getting ready for their playoff run tomorrow. But the Stanley Cup was in Winnipeg yesterday. As we cast our minds back to hockey, we recall that NHL star Seth Jarvis helped the Carolina Hurricanes win their first Stanley Cup in more than 20 years. And he's from here, so he brought the cup to Winnipeg's Children's Hospital yesterday as a part of visits in the community. He then went over to the Tuxedo Community Center, which was his hometown community rink when he was coming up and getting to the big leagues. And that's where hundreds of young fans came out to see Seth and hockey's biggest prize up close. Seth Jarvis also took some time to speak to reporters during his stop in Winnipeg.
Have you ever smiled that much in your life? No, but it was incredible to share with the community and see a lot of friends and family friends and people come this way. It's been awesome.
In terms of taking the cup to the Children's Hospital today, what was kind of like, what was your mindset doing that?
I just want to make people smile. It's cool the power that thing has and what it can do for people. So obviously those kids are going through some tough times, and just anything I can do to brighten their day for a little bit, talk to them, meet them, show them the Stanley Cup, and just see them smile and see them have a little bit of fun is amazing.
Why is it have any kind of early childhood memories of kind of at the rink here?
Yeah, I mean, I spent almost every day I could here. I spent way too many hours out on this ice, past my parents would let me, and they were lucky enough when I was younger, they gave me the keys to this place, so they'd let me keep the lights on and keep the doors open so I could skate as long as I wanted. And they're a massive part of my childhood and a massive part of the reason I am where I am today.
Being drafted in 2020 and then coming back here 6 years later, did you ever think you'd be coming back with the cup? Lots of people, thousands of people lining up just to meet you?
I couldn't imagine that many people coming, but yeah, to be able to do this in this building especially, it's been incredible.
What's it like a full circle moment like this? Like you said, you spent so much time here, now you're here and all these kids are excited to see you.
Yeah, it's amazing. I could imagine if this happened when I was that age, I'd be the exact same way. So to see them and share moments with them, with kids that still skate out here and hang out here all the time is awesome.
Were you surprised with just how many people showed up today?
Absolutely, yeah. I wasn't expecting that, so I can't believe the support I've gotten. It's been incredible, and I know we didn't get through everyone today, which sucks, but hopefully be able to walk it by them and make their day a little bit better.
Just going through this last year, obviously Stanley Cup, you got to represent Team Canada at the Olympics. What's this last year been like for you? It's obviously a whirlwind of kind of lots of emotions, I'm sure.
It's been crazy, yeah. I've lived out a lot of my dreams, winning, playing the Olympics, being able to do all that stuff in 1 year is incredible. And yeah, I mean, I'm just super grateful for everyone around me to support me to get there.
What's it like being with your family here and seeing your brother, your parents, and all the extended family?
It's awesome. This is what's most supposed to be, just sharing with people that helped you out. So to have them here, have their friends here, we have so much help from people my dad worked with, like you said, extended family helping make this possible, and the people here in Tuxedo have been incredible, giving me the space and let me do this. It's been amazing.
When you win the cup, raise it on the ice, it's special. What's it like when you see your name actually on the cup and knowing it'll live in immortality?
It's really cool, especially when they explain that it'll be on there for like 60 more years. So it's amazing just to be part of such a historic trophy, and to be able to do it with the team we had is amazing.
You kind of touched on it.
Pardon?
Have you had any meals out of the cup?
Not yet. No, I got to eat soon, actually, yeah.
You kind of touched on it, but like, why was it important for you today to give back so much to your community, not only here but the hospital? Like, this is a big day, it's a busy day for you, but why was that important for you to do this?
I think that's just what Winnipeg's about, is helping each other out, and like I said before, it was there to just make people smile, brighten their days, and as much as I can do that, I love to, and so going to the hospital, meeting those kids was awesome, and then obviously coming here to be able to do this with the community and the place I grew up in is amazing.
I was talking to your brother earlier today, and we were just talking about, when you were younger, playing in the backyard, most kids dream of, scoring in the Stanley Cup final, and you did that in Game 2, in overtime. How did that feel?
Like you said, like I was playing in my backyard. I've relived that goal when I was growing up millions of times, and to be able to actually do it in real life is amazing, and definitely a moment I'll never forget.
You've had your hands all over the cup, but how does it compare to the first time?
Compared to that time. No, when I lifted that first time, it's like 37 pounds or something, but it felt like a feather. It was a lot of emotion, and it was incredible.
You spoke about the community, how important it is. I think some of Grace was saying that first person was here at 5:30 in the morning for a chance to meet you. Like, what does that mean to you?
It means the world. I mean, for people to do that and line up just to come say hi and show support, it's incredible. And that's what I love so much about Winnipeg and why I always come back home is you can't replace this. You can't replace home. And it's just amazing.
So you can hear the crowds behind Seth Jarvis yesterday as he made his way to Winnipeg with the Stanley Cup from the Carolina Hurricanes. Of course, if you know anything about Stanley Cup, the players all get a chance to take it to their home communities, which is a really nice tradition, and a lot of people really appreciate it. So he was there in Winnipeg talking to reporters, including CBC's Mark Arsenault, about bringing the cup here to Winnipeg.
How do you listen to your favorite Manitoba shows when you're on the move? Get your daily dose of information radio, Radio Noon, and Up to Speed, live and on demand. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. It's the easiest way to keep our province at your fingertips. Download the CBC News app today.
Well, last year in Manitoba, we had an unprecedented wildfire season in our province. So as I mentioned earlier, it makes watching what's happening in BC, specifically this summer, hit differently. It has been devastating there. The wildfires in British Columbia's Okanagan Valley have been terrifying in their speed and scale. Communities have scrambled to escape danger. Yesterday, we talked to a former Manitoban. He just moved to BC who was in Penticton, and he got evacuated from that community and then moved to Summerland, and we've all seen the flames there. So people have just been on the move and, as I said, scrambling to escape the flames. Now, some people also have watched their homes be reduced to ashes. There's a lot of talk about mitigation strategies for the future. Even so, though, experts say that the ferocious fires are the new normal. Robert McLemon is a professor of environmental studies at Wilfrid Laurier University. Good morning.
Good morning.
So if this is to be the new normal, tell me a little bit about how experts like yourself prioritize mitigation efforts.
And I think the key word here is mitigation, because we're never going to be able to prevent or completely eliminate wildfires because they're just a natural part of the ecosystem when we look at the boreal forest, when we look at the mountains of British Columbia. So for decades, what was happening in Canada is that governments were making efforts to suppress fires, no matter where they occurred. And now we recognize that there needs to be a transition in terms of forest management to allow in less settled areas for fires to burn, smaller fires to burn out some of that underbrush, allow the trees to rejuvenate. In more populated areas, then to have controlled burns where possible to try and reduce the amount of fuel that's built up in the forest. But there's also things in terms of like community planning, for example. When we look at the Okanagan Valley, there's been a lot of development pressure there in recent decades, a lot of new homes, but there's also a lot of new industry, fruit orchards, vineyards, and things like that. So there's a lot of development taking right up against the forest fringe, and that puts people and infrastructure at risk. And then, of course, greenhouse gas emissions. The reality is that the science is showing very clearly that the size and scale of fires in Canada is getting larger, and it's directly connected to our greenhouse gas emissions. So, for example, when we think about this landscape, this is also the very same part of British Columbia where the government's talking about putting more oil pipelines through it. And so that is part of the challenge that we need to face in coming years.
It's interesting because you're talking about controlled burns and mitigation and prevention, not prevention fully, but mitigation of fires. I mean, it's something that Indigenous communities have been doing for centuries. And it's also something that we haven't listened to all the time. So what gets in the way of this already happening in our country? Not just controlled burns, but some of the mitigation efforts. How did we get to this place?
Well, there's a variety of reasons. I mean, one is fragmentation of jurisdiction. So, for example, building, permits and plans are often done at local government levels, with wildfire responses and emergency management taking place at provincial levels or at federal levels. There's just, as I mentioned earlier, economic pressure. There's a reason why people want to live in places like the Okanagan, for example, because it is such a pleasant climate, because it is so productive, but it puts people and infrastructure at risk. You mentioned First Nations communities. It's very clear from examples in the Cariboo region of BC right now and in northwestern Ontario earlier this year and in parts of Manitoba that these communities simply lack the resources, the financial resources, the infrastructure to be able to respond to wildfires, to mitigate the risks, and to evacuate in times of need. So I think over the last few years, we're starting to learn the lessons that we need to focus on this, make it a national priority, and to allocate resources to people and communities who need them most, because the risk is not going away.
In terms of comparisons, I know you've already touched on some of this, but I'm just curious about the different firefighting techniques between, boreal forest, Canadian Shield, like we're going to see here in Manitoba, and then the Okanagan Valley.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the broader challenges associated with it, the Okanagan Valley is a very densely populated, very high use, mixed use area compared to, say, northern Manitoba or northwestern Ontario. So right now, for example, in the Summerland area of British Columbia, where people have been evacuated, where there are fires threatening homes and properties, the challenges are very different there because there's stories coming out of people evacuating their homes, even as aircraft are flying over top and dropping fire retardant chemicals onto their properties to try and protect them. So one of the challenges is first responders getting to these areas even as they're trying to evacuate people. One of the advantages of a densely populated area is that there are roads, there are airfields, there are fuel depots so that equipment and people can get to the fire, the front of the fire faster than, say, in northern Manitoba, where there are fewer roads, where many of the communities you can only fly into them. So just getting people there to fight the fires is a real logistical challenge.
If you look forward, what do you see on the horizon by way of a national strategy? I mean, we've had the firefighters on repeatedly talking about the need for a national strategy, the need for a national office, coordination. We know we have, firefighting help that comes from all around the world. So we have resource issues in terms of people doing the work. But will we get a national strategy? Is it close? Is it something that is necessary, I guess?
Well, it's clear that it's necessary because, as I said earlier, the risk is not going away. It's going to only amplify in coming years. I think the experts who you've just mentioned, they know that we need a national strategy. We've been inching towards that in terms of, strategies and frameworks for action being developed between, provincial ministers of natural resources and the federal government. There's been some transfer of resources, but we need to be sprinting towards a national solution and not inching towards it. And I think that's one of the great challenges here in Canada because of the fragmentation of responsibilities for natural resources falling to the provincial governments, but the need for emergency responses needing a national strategy. So hopefully these events that we're seeing this summer act as a catalyst to get the levels of government to work together and to come up with a coordinated strategy, because it's clear that no province on its own has the resources necessary to deal with it on its own.
Well, thoughts with BC, and thank you very much for this morning.
Thanks for having me on the show.
That's Robert McLemmon with us, Professor of Environmental Studies at Wilfrid Laurier University. Well, how about a bit of music to get us to the news? It's perfect for 6:27 a.m. This is Songbirds by Tim Baker.
Like a fool in a foolish coat, trying to be cool, but just being cold. I have seen the saddest thing, not you crying, but that from me. No, be free, just be as you like, and sing like a bird, and soar and sing in flight. No, be free, but connected to the sky, and sing like a bird, soar and sing in flight. Singing like dee-dee-die-die-die, dee-dee-die-die-die, dee-dee-die. Like dee-dee-die-die-die, dee-dee-die-die-die. I saw you shrink back into your sleep. I saw you shrink until you disappeared from me. What do you hide from? And what hides from us? And What kind of colors have we covered up and lost? No, won't be free.
It's one of those songs you can't help but sway to, right? That is St. John's Tim Baker, known for his heartfelt songwriting and warm acoustic sound, which you can hear. This is Songbirds on CBC ahead of your 6:30 news. We'll have a full rundown of your regional forecast and your latest traffic issues on this Tuesday morning, right after your news from Winnipeg.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's mainly clear and 15 downtown, clear and 8 in Brandon, 11 with light rain reported in Churchill. After years of promises, a location change, and plenty of debate, Manitoba's first supervised drug consumption site opens today. The CBC's Ian Fraze now on what to expect.
Starting at 11 in the morning, Winnipeg's core will have a permanent spot where people can use drugs while under the supervision of trained staff. The Indigenous-led supervised consumption site will open Tuesdays to Saturdays for nearly 8 hours a day. This opening is a long time coming. The NDP promised to open a supervised consumption site in the 2023 election. The government initially chose a spot on Disraeli, but scrapped that plan after complaints it was too close to a school and childcare centre. So the government settled on 366 Henry Avenue, a largely industrial area west of Main Street. But businesses and residents still complained, worried it will make their neighborhood more dangerous. Meanwhile, supporters say the site will save lives, giving users a safe space to consume drugs. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Critics of Manitoba Hydro's plans to burn more fossil fuels have some fuel of their own from the Crown Corporation. During public hearings late last month, Hydro officials testified their Brandon natural gas plant had to run below capacity during 3 out of the past 10 winter peak use periods. Hydro plans to spend $3 billion to expand this plant. James Wilt handles policy for the Manitoba Climate Action Team. He says the testimony contradicts previous Hydro claims that cleaner energy is too unreliable in the winter.
Up until now, Hydro has been quite protective of this sort of information. There's been a lot of reports over the months and years that questions the wintertime reliability of gas plants across North America, including Alberta, where there's been significant outages, but we haven't really seen this kind of information until now.
Hydro officials say the existing Brandon plant requires maintenance and the expansion will be more reliable. A ransomware attack on Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre has affected doors, heating and cooling at Manitoba's largest hospital. Shared Health says patient safety is not affected, but the Manitoba Nurses Union says it's concerned given the number of security incidents at the hospital. Darlene Jackson is the union's president.
It's worrying for staff because if doors are not secure, then you can have individuals just walking into doors without anyone knowing they're in the building.
The hospital told staff in a memo it's placed more security at entrances. People in Manitoba's Columbian community are trying to connect with loved ones back home following Monday's deadly earthquake. At least 130 people are dead following the early morning quake, which rocked Western Columbia and neighboring countries. Cruz Woloski is president of the Columbian Alliance in Manitoba. She says her family members in Medellin are safe, but other parts of the country have been hit hard, including the city of Cali.
So it's kind of, we know, like, okay, what city are you from? So we can just kind of, hey, it's from this city. How you doing? How's your family? Is everything okay? So people just kind of are saying thank you. Kind of, sometimes we need to hear that from others that we hear.
There are more than 1,500 people in Manitoba's Columbian community. More international and national news coming up in World Report at 7. An advocate for Manitobans living with disabilities says the province is still years behind on ensuring accessibility in public spaces. The province has committed to creating a regulatory standard so sidewalks and parks are built for all people. David Cron with the Cerebral Palsy Association of Manitoba says those requirements should have been enacted years ago.
That regulation isn't out yet, and it's way overdue. But the government should be a leader in accessibility. It shouldn't be a follower.
Cron says that without those standards, there are no enforcement or penalties. And a Winnipeg dog advocate says she's seeing more people surrender dogs for cost-related reasons than ever before. Carla Martinelli-Irvin says the Winnipeg Pet Rescue Shelter has seen 200 such cases this year. She says a majority of the time it's because owners can't afford their vet care.
There's a lot of good people that have to give up their animals due to costs, and I want to stress that. They're not all people that are just kind of, there you go, don't want to see them again. It's a lot of good people that due to cost are having to relinquish their pets.
Last month, the Winnipeg Humane Society also saw 150 owner surrenders. It says the majority of those were because of pet care costs. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much, Josh.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb from our newsroom live. It is 6:35 a.m. It's time for your regional forecast with Abby Adiemi.
Yeah, we start clear, then we'll see the clouds roll in southern Manitoba today. Sure, you can go ahead, Marcy. We're going to see some clouds roll in southern Manitoba today with highs in the mid-20s. While up north, we're seeing cooler conditions with widespread, thunder showers in a lot of areas there. Across the Red River, the Pembina Valley, the Westman, the Parkland, the Interlake region, we're looking at morning temperatures starting between 8 degrees to 15 in Winnipeg that we are in right now. Mostly clear outside. Highs would reach 25 as we see those clouds roll in later. Singling out the Parkland region where we see more like cooler conditions. Highs just in the range of the 21s and the 22s. And that region also has a good chance of showers developing later this morning alongside a risk of thunderstorms. Moving into the north central region, the Power, Flin Flon, Norway House, we're looking at 11s to 14 degrees spreading out there. Highs will be heading towards the 22 marks, and we'll see a mix of sun and clouds later. The region also has a slim chance of afternoon showers. We'll go further north into Thompson and the Lynn Lake region. We're looking at highs more like between, let's just say, 16 to 18 degrees, and also there's a risk of thunder showers in that part of the province. And Churchill and Tudula Lake, we're seeing 11 degrees there right now. Light rain, some areas seeing misty conditions. We'll see highs just close to 14 degrees up there. Also, we have a slim chance of potential thunder showers this afternoon in that part of the province. But here in Winnipeg, we are sitting at 9 degrees at the airport, 15 at the Forks. We're still tracking those shallow fog at the airport region, and we'll see highs around 25 degrees. Then if we look at conditions on the road, just expect construction to really slow things down. Expect detours on major routes. We're looking at that Lewis Bridge that we've been talking about. It remains closed in both directions between Higgins and Strathcona up until August 17th. And of course, if you go on Henderson Highway, the two northbound lanes are closed between Kingsford and the Springfield area until August 14th. Also for today only, the northbound Pembina ramp to the westbound Abenergy Makina is actually closed for today, so you need to find another route if you're going down that road. But for other drivers and commuters on the road, just drive carefully. Watch out for cyclists and pedestrians as always, and report any issues towards 788-3093.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Abby Adiemi covers the road and the weather here on the show. Next, Phil Lamont is here with our business news. Hey, Phil.
Hi, Marcy.
So for the past 2 years, there's a lot of talk about the K-shaped economy in Canada and the U.S., and that is where the wealthy do well and everyone else less so. Are we still seeing that trend this year?
It started to come into some question, and that's why I'm picking on this. K-shaped recovery is where the top bar of the K, the letter K, the richest 10% or so, see their wealth grow, mainly because they've invested heavily in the stock markets, which have done well over the past couple of years. Meanwhile, the bottom part of the K, everybody down there gets squeezed. Higher prices for everything, but no real wage increases. New reports, though, out of the U.S. argue that the gap between the two bands, the high and the low, might be actually narrowing. PNC Bank says spending difference between the richest Americans and everyone else at its smallest level since 2022. So the gap's narrowing. It's a sign that the middle class and less wealthy doing better economically in recent months. Another U.S. study says that less wealthy Americans spending more on discretionary items. You got to run with the argument on this one, but it basically says, look, these people are more confident enough now in their circumstances that they're going to they're purchasing non-essential goods. So it's not just about, can I afford food? Now I have enough money, or I feel confident enough that I can buy some other nice things in my life. In Canada, the K-shaped recovery still exists. C.D. Howe Institute says since 2021, so 5 years, Canadians in the top income bracket have about $75,000 in net savings. That's what they've saved. Lower income earners, they've spent more than they've saved, to about the tune of $39,000, so in the red to that level. But economists at the CIBC, they've argued that spending in this country is really kind of the same, regardless of how rich you are. So in effect, they're saying there's no K. Why am I picking on all this? Well, some politicians and analysts have argued that the growing wealth of the richest Canadians, the top arm of the K, means governments can actually tax these people more heavily because they're just making a whack of dough. If the gap between the richest, in this case Canadians, and the less wealthy is narrowing, then there's less of an argument for taxing the high-income earners.
Interesting analysis. Let's go to another story. Speaking of getting squeezed, more Canadians are declaring bankruptcy as well. How bad is the situation becoming at where we sit right now in the year?
Well, we haven't seen bankruptcies at this level since 2009. More than 37,000 Canadians have filed for insolvency in the second quarter of this year. That's the most in more than a decade. The increase compared to last year, same time, 7%. That's all according to the Federal Superintendent of Bankruptcy. Major factor, higher mortgage costs. In 2022, the Canadians every month, average monthly mortgage payment about $1,400. Last year, the average monthly mortgage payment about $2,700. Your credit cards haven't helped. In 2020, the average Canadian had plastic debt in the range of about $4,000. 2025, that number is about $4,700. So you'd say, well, that's not a big increase. Yeah, but if you calculated your real income, because I kind of did that, it's fallen almost 20% between 2020 and 2026. So that's after inflation. Your actually spending power is less. So your debt's going up, your spending power is going down, makes it harder to cover your credit card debt, your mortgage debt, hence the increase in bankruptcies.
And let's stick with personal finances. It's kind of a theme today for your report. Yep. People are living longer than they used to, we know. So has that changed their investing habits? Yeah, and substantially so. In 1990, the average lifespan of a Canadian, 77 years. It's now 83 years. When I was in worked in my dad's brokerage firm at university, there was older people would come in, the 80-year-olds, and they'd be in really conservative stuff. Well, the trouble is now what's happening is since you're living longer, you need more money to retire comfortably. So in 1990, you needed maybe $200,000, $300,000. Now you need $1 million, $1.5 million in savings. So that means sitting on low-risk bonds, because that's what those people did years ago, not enough to get you the return you need for your nest egg. For one thing, the return on fixed income bonds, that's lower than it used to be. It's about 3.5% now. Back in the 90s, it was more than 6%. Older Canadians keeping more money in stocks, partly because we're actually better investors. They're more knowledgeable than we were 50 years ago. But also, we just need higher returns. So back in 1990, Americans older than 70 years of age held about 20% of their investments in stocks. Now it's about 40%, but it can be as high as 70% for people aged 60 to 65. That's all fine. You need the return. But the problem here, Marcy, the risk goes up as you invest in stocks because stocks go down as well as up. So it's great if you're doing okay, but you get a hiccup at a certain age, let's say 65 and you want to retire and all of a sudden the market goes down, you can see those savings evaporate fairly quickly and you lose on that gamble. All right. Thanks a lot, Phil. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Business News with Phil Demont. Well, the shallow fog being reported, we're not seeing it downtown outside our CBC studios yet this morning, but you might in parts of the city, so beware of that. And quite a temperature difference. So downtown 15, 9 degrees at the airport. In Brandon, it's clear and 10. Thompson's mostly cloudy, also 10 degrees right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Abby and Jenica and Darren behind the glass, 6:43 a.m. And thanks for joining us. Well, next on the show, there are certain things that you know that you can't use, like just do it. If you started a shoe company and that was your tagline, Nike would be coming for you. But what about other words, phrases, or internet memes? Can someone just pluck them from the English language and voila, they're off limits? Cost of living producer Jenny DeRosio finds that more phrases are being trademarked all the time, and not everyone's happy about it.
Amitha Massey is a fitness coach in Calgary. And if there's one thing she loves, it's walking.
That is like what I'm known for. I am always the girl getting her steps in. And so I was like,
Last summer, she wanted to do something fun, so she hosted a big walk.
and I'm going to call it a hot girl walk because I think it's so funny. I was like, that's exactly what it is.
60 people showed up, ready to strut.
We drank aminos, we drank protein, we had chia pudding, we just
It made for a cute social media video. But that video got taken down. Then, when Amitha hosted another hot girl walk a few months later and posted another video, her Instagram got deactivated.
I'm freaking out because I had over 3,000 followers on that account. I was running my personal training business.
If you go for a stroll with your friends and call it a hot girl walk, that's fine. But if you use that phrase to promote a fitness event, you're infringing on a trademark that belongs to the American influencer Mia Lind.
This way I can keep control over the mission of the Hot Girl Walk, which is to keep fitness accessible and inclusive.
Most of us associate trademarks with brand names and logos, like the Nike swoosh. But lots of stuff can be trademarked. Colors, scents, and yes, phrases. If a phrase distinguishes what you're selling from another business, you can trademark it. Companies do this all the time.
I'm loving it.
So do celebrities.
Bam, bam, bam.
Oh, Chef Emerald.
Bam.
And then there was the time when late-night TV host Johnny Carson had to make sure this legendary line didn't go down the drain. Back in 1980, a Canadian porta potty company wanted to trademark the name Here's Johnny. You know, like the John.
Now, you can imagine that Johnny Carson was not thrilled about this.
Dan Bearskin is a trademark lawyer in Toronto. He says Johnny Carson fought this and won.
The name Here's Johnny was so well known in Canada and so closely associated with Johnny Carson as a television performer that any use for anything, especially portable toilets, would cause confusion.
The Federal Court of Canada said the phrase belonged to Carson first and couldn't be registered without his consent. In the age of the internet, where anything can go viral, Karis Craig says more people are trying to cash in on popular phrases. She's a law professor at York University in Toronto.
If you can successfully trademark a catchphrase that everybody is saying, then you have almost a ready-made brand, right? You don't need to do the work of raising awareness and building the brand.
Some dude in Oshawa, Ontario, just did this. He successfully trademarked the phrase, bruh. You know, the word you can't get your kid to stop saying.
Bruh, 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 bruh.
But trademarking something people say isn't always a moneymaker. And it can really tick people off.
Hot girls don't trademark common or cultural phrases.
Your entire target audience and all of your consumers have turned against you. What did we think was going to happen when you trademark a common phrase?
Social media can complicate ownership. If we all have a hand in making a phrase popular, who gets to profit off of it? Karis Craig thinks maybe no one should.
Not everything has to be owned. Not everything has to be intellectual property. Not everything has to be exploited by a single actor. Sometimes it's nice that we all share things.
Unless it's going to get you in hot water. Amitha Massey didn't want a legal battle. She's still doing group walks, but she's calling them something else.
Now I've branded it under my brand. I call it a Glow Girl Walk.
For the cost of living, I'm Jenny DeRosio.
Okay, we cannot resist talking about this, so I did a little Google of tagline checklists, Abby. Unique, professional, it's yours, maybe 6 to 8 words max. Focuses on your core service or product and describes what sets you apart. So do you have a tagline? Abby.
No, you've just made me change my. You said how many words?
Well, the maximum they say is 6 to 8
max,
words.
but okay,
Max.
okay.
So here, if I say Abby, you say
chill.
Oh, just one word you're
Just
going with.
one word,
Yeah.
chill. It's going to be that emoji, frozen, happy face, and it's melting. Chill.
Chill. Let's bring Ryan Tumulty into it. He's waiting to talk politics with us, but we're roping him into the silly. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm all right. How are you guys?
Good. Ryan's here on Zoom. Yeah, to talk about what's happening in Ottawa. Do you have what would your tagline be?
Well, I was saying I'm a father to a small child right now, so tired all the time, I think is my tagline.
I like it.
Please send naps.
I like it. I like it. I think mine is probably how I sign on to the show every morning. It's safe, but I don't know if it's not a tagline though, right? But it's good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. So I do that daily. It might be. I don't know. So,
I think that's got to be it.
Yeah. Well, you know where we're heading with this. We're going to open the listener line, so let's do that. 788-3205. What would your tagline be, listeners? Think about yourself. Think about who you are. Don't steal Ryan's tired dad one. 788-3205. Well, you know who's tired? Probably the Prime Minister and all the premiers and everyone trying to get a negotiation deal with the states, Ryan. We're really following this closely in Manitoba because we're wondering whether or not U.S. liquor soon to be back in the shelves here. The Premier's office said to us that said to CBC Manitoba that Wabkanu wants to see a good deal for Canada, and he's waiting to see what the results are of the negotiations I'm referring to. So we're now just over a week to the U.S. August 19th tariff deadline. The Canadian government reportedly considering some trade concessions to meet the U.S. demands, and now one of them is the U.S. booze and making sure it's back on the shelves. So we're watching that one. But this is all a very political fine line to walk, obviously, because of how volatile the U.S. administration can be. So what are your thoughts this morning on which concessions will be the most politically dangerous for the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I mean, on some level, all of them are going to be dangerous. You know, the mood of this country is not concessions. I think we either all are these people or we know these people who've avoided U.S. products for a year, who've avoided U.S. travel. The numbers really bear that out. The numbers of Canadians who are showing up in places like Florida or Las Vegas has dropped off a cliff. So Canadians are really leaning into this fight with the U.S. And so to concede anything, I think is going to be politically dangerous. I would say one thing that sticks out to me is the concessions that are being demanded from the Canadian dairy system, the supply management system. Canadian dairy farmers are a very powerful political group and they hone that political power all the time. There's a law on the books that they push to have passed that says that the Canadian government cannot make trade concessions when it comes to dairy. So that is a big part of the risks that they're running. If you look at the Liberals right now, the Liberals are running a candidate in Chicoutimi-LaFord in a by-election they really hope to win, who is a dairy farmer and sat on the Industries Association as an executive. So, that's a very dangerous political concession for them to make. We'll just have to wait and see, though, what they're prepared to do. Now,
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is repeatedly saying that the Prime Minister should stop, quote, caving to American demands. Will this play well for him politically then, in terms of if the mood is, don't concede much in this country? What will that mean for Pierre Poilievre and his party's fortunes?
Yeah, I think that's the sort of $1 million political question in Canada right now. It's very clear that Canadians are not interested in concessions, but I think they're also prepared to give the government a little bit of rope. I think there's a recognition that Donald Trump is not an easy person to negotiate with, and that something has to happen here, that Canada may have to put a little water into its wine. I think there's a realization of that. But just how much, I don't know. And I think, Pierre Poilievre has been talking for a year about seeking out a trade deal with the U.S. that would involve no tariffs, that would involve completely free trade between the two countries. And, I don't know how real that is, because that's not something that I think the Trump administration, would agree to, would even allow to be put on the table. That's just not where they're coming from right now. So, I think this is politically risky, and there's a real chance that Canadians run out of patience with the Carney government on this file. But I don't know when that's going to happen.
I can't imagine how day in and day out you're just like looking for details on this and finding nothing. What's that like for you as a reporter to sort of be wanting to hear, but knowing these are negotiations, they're behind closed doors, and yet we're trying to understand what they're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the stakes on this are huge. And I know the Canadian government is trying to reach out to stakeholders in the various sectors, let them know what's on the table. I'm sure the premiers are getting regular bits of information because putting booze back on the shelves would not be the federal government's choice. It would be all those provincial liquor companies and monopolies that would make that decision. I think, definitely there's a desire to get as much detail as we can. But I don't think we're going to get a full picture of this until, next week when this deal is out, assuming a deal is reached, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's just so much at stake here for the Canadian economy that I'm not actually that surprised that the government is playing its cards so close to its chest.
Well, what did they announce yesterday? Canadian Steel, they had an announcement yesterday with some measures already that are helped to offer relief to companies.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of this as kind of the Amazon Prime plan for Canadian Steel, because it's a 50% reduction on delivery fees, shipping fees for Canadian Steel. So say you wanted to build a new bridge or a skyscraper in Winnipeg.
We're doing that
and you want to,
over in Arlington.
Well, if you want that steel to come from Ontario, there's a 50% reduction on the shipping fees to get that steel there. I think there's a lot of interest in buying Canadian steel, but in a lot of cases, because of the distances involved, American steel ends up being cheaper. And so I think the government's trying to level that playing field, especially while this trade fight is ongoing, trying to get more Canadian steel in more Canadian places, frankly.
All right, we'll leave it there, Ryan. And at some point, you got to bring your little one on the air because we'd love to see them. What's their name?
I mean, he'd love to be on the air. He's made attempts in the past. There's a good solid door here.
I haven't seen him, I don't think, on Zoom. I know he's made an audio appearance on the show before.
Yeah.
All right, get some sleep. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for this.
All right, thank you.
I neglected to introduce Ryan. He's, of course, a regular on our show every Tuesday, most Tuesdays, that is, with Ottawa Report. Ryan Tumulty, political reporter with the Toronto Star, live here on CBC's Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM. Let's dip into weather, traffic, and get a couple headlines on for you, too. Shallow fog in Winnipeg. It's 15. Our high is 25 today. We will have increasing clouds, so a little less sunny than yesterday. On the morning commute, there are a couple of things going on. So Louise Bridge remains closed. Henderson Highway around Springfield. You're going to want to watch it there. You're going to lose some lanes. And Pembina Highway, the northbound ramp to westbound Abinogi-Mi'kmaq is closed for street construction today only. And so use alternate routes and look for that, or plan that before you head there, because you won't be able to get off on the ramp. 788-3093, that is where you can reach us. In the next hour of Information Radio, as Manitoba's first supervised consumption site prepares to open today in Winnipeg, we're going to take you down the long, winding road of how advocates, health officials, and politicians arrived at this moment of change for our province. CBC's Corey Funk will be in with a special report. He's been digging through the archives. In addition, in the next hour of the show, we're going to be talking more about the high cost of veterinary care. And Josh Crabb is in. I know we have some crossover today, so I'm not sure what detail you have in your headlines about these stories and more, Josh.
Good morning. Yeah, we have all those stories on the news. It's a busy morning in the newsroom here. I can tell you that we're following up on the ransomware attack at Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre. It's affected doors, heating, and air conditioning at Manitoba's largest hospital. This comes 2 years after the Auditor General warned Shared Health to beef up security. As you mentioned, a Winnipeg animal shelter is seeing more people to surrender dogs for cost-related reasons than ever before. The Winnipeg Pet Rescue Shelter has seen 200 such cases this year. And Manitoba's Columbian community is supporting each other in the wake of a devastating earthquake in their home country. Your next local CBC News is at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
Well, to build on the vet story, on the show, we are going to hear from Jonas Watson. He is going to be with us. He has previously been the top vet in the province. Now he's back working at the Grant Park Animal Hospital. But he's going to weigh in on what's been happening with pet surrenders, what his thoughts are on the high costs of veterinary care, which CBC has reported on across the country in the past. So we've also got that coming up for you, too. Remember to call with your tagline. Come on, give us some summer fun. 788-3205. If you or your life had a tagline, what would it be? It's 1 minute now to 7 o'clock. Stay with us. We've got World Report up next on CBC.
today on The Current.
But that social fabric is now torn, tattered, and frayed after a series of violent incidents.
I'm JP Tasker. The small northern BC town of Dawson Creek is hijacked by a wave of drug-fueled violence. The CBC's Fifth Estate and CBC podcast spent 2 years digging into this story. We'll talk about who's behind the violence. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Officials in Colombia say at least 130 people were killed in yesterday's powerful earthquake. Workers in the city of Cali call out for silence after one of them hears a voice in the rubble. Time is running out to find survivors. Freelance reporter Manuel Rueda joins us now from the capital, Bogota. And Manuel, it is the morning after this quake. What can you tell us about rescue operations?
Well, the rescue has been going out throughout the night at different sites. You know, this is a complex problem for the Colombian government because you have 4 cities at least that have been majorly affected. And they're in an area that's about 400 kilometers from top to bottom. Some of these places it's going to be easier to get humanitarian aid to because there are airports nearby. That's the situation in Cali. Some of the other places, for example, the Chocó region, which is further to the north, is going to be much tougher because there's many small towns without airports and with very poor roads.
Colombia's president was sworn in just days ago. What are some of the challenges he's now facing?
So Abelardo de la Espriella will now have to coordinate with regional governments and with municipal governments that he's not very familiar with, basically. And he'll also have to coordinate with other countries for aid because Colombia does not have enough rescue teams to attend all these disaster sites. I mean, just in the city of Pereira, which was one of the hardest hit, there's, for example, 15 buildings there that the mayor said where people could still be trapped under the rubble. In Cali, there's at least 40 buildings that have collapsed. So they're going to have to bring in rescue teams from different countries to provide support. Ecuador and El Salvador and Mexico have already offered teams. So this is going to be a big challenge for someone who just started being Colombia's president.
Thank you, Manuel.
You're welcome.
Freelance reporter Manuel Rueda joining me now from Bogota. Typhoon Dolphin is churning inland in central China. People make their way through the flooded streets of Hubei province. It is home to more than 58 million people. Alerts for severe flooding and landslides were issued. About 1,000 kilometers to the north in the capital, Beijing will be getting more rain. It's expected to receive over 1/3 of its annual rainfall in the next 24 hours. That's more than 150 millimeters of rain in a day. South African police say at least 14 people are dead at an illegal mining operation. Several more are injured. It happened about 130 kilometers northwest of Johannesburg. Few other details have been confirmed. Unsanctioned mining has flourished in South Africa. Gangs pay miners to search for gold and other precious metals in abandoned shafts. Parts of Europe are in another dangerous heat wave. It is the 5th heat wave for England and France. Major areas of both countries are under water restrictions. And in Spain, work continues to try to gain control of wildfires. The CBC's Julia Chapman has the latest from London.
There's no let-up in one of Europe's hottest summers on record. France is expecting temperatures close to 40 degrees today after its hottest ever month in July. Water use is being restricted in almost 70% of the country. Parts of England are set to see temperatures reach the mid-30s this week. 45 million people are now living in areas with drought. Most of them are also facing restrictions on water use. Stuart Colville is from the trade body Water UK.
So we're seeing a lot of pressure on the public water system. Demand is up by about 1/3.
British health officials are warning about the impact of the latest heat wave. They estimate heat caused at least 2,700 deaths in England and Wales during hot spells in May and June. In Spain, firefighters continue to tackle blazes. Some areas affected earlier this summer are braced for an influx of tourists. Nearly 500,000 people are expected to flock to Spain to watch the solar eclipse tomorrow. It will be one of the best places in Europe to see the moon block the sun. Authorities fear careless tourists could spark new fires. Event organizer Carolina Andres says some land has been cleared and fire breaks have been created. A huge police operation will be in place to mitigate risks. The European Union's climate monitor calls this a record-breaking summer. It says Western Europe saw its hottest ever June and July. Julia Chapman, CBC News, London.
The former president of Syria has been sentenced to death in absentia. A Syrian court convicted Bashar al-Assad of murder for crimes committed during the country's 14-year civil war. Assad and his family fled to Russia 2 years ago. He has been living there in exile ever since. One of Assad's top officials, his maternal cousin, Atef Najib, was not able to evade capture. He is being held in Syria and has also been sentenced to death. To Ukraine's capital. Crews work to put out a fire after a Russian ballistic missile attack in Kyiv. It is one of several cities recovering from overnight missile and drone strikes. At least 9 people are dead. Several others are injured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of using North Korean missiles to carry out the attack. He says it was meant to inflict maximum damage on civilian infrastructure. Zelensky is warning other nations about North Korea's growing involvement in the war and the potential danger it poses to them. Russia's defense ministry confirms it carried out overnight strikes. It says it targeted military-related transport and logistics centers. More than 100 wildfires are tearing through parts of British Columbia. In BC's Okanagan region, thousands of people have been displaced. People are eager to return to their homes and communities, but there's a lot of cleaning up to do before that's possible. The CBC's Michelle Allen reports.
Through the smoke, water bombers unload on the Bald Range fire. Crews are working overnight as dry conditions fuel the flames near Summerland. But so much is burning, evacuees are not able to return home.
It's not a time right now to be able to go back to the community. It is not safe at this time.
Graham Statt is the Regional Emergency Operations Center Director. At an update last evening, Summerland officials say they will start triaging requests from people who want to temporarily return to evacuation zones. But if evacuees are allowed in, it will be temporary. Summerland Mayor Doug Holmes says what evacuees find may be difficult to take in.
When we do get back, we need to brace ourselves for what's there or what's not there. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard.
Police say they aren't aware of any new fatalities. Over the weekend, an 80-year-old woman from Meadow Valley died while trying to flee with her family. The Bald Range fire now burns over 15,000 hectares. It's one of multiple wildfires ripping through BC's interior. Over 21,000 people throughout the province are under evacuation orders, including the entirety of Summerland. Michelle Allen, CBC News, Vancouver.
Federal Conservatives are raising concerns of a possible conflict of interest in a military satellite contract. Ottawa announced the $2.6 billion deal with Telesat last week. Prime Minister Mark Carney knows its CEO personally. As CBC's Murray Brewster explains, the project, meant to help Canada monitor its far north, is prompting questions about transparency.
This is about a matter of trust and transparency.
Conservative defense critic James Bazan, who says the government has some explaining to do about its decision to hand the multi-billion-dollar satellite contract to Telesat.
Was Prime Minister Carney involved in the decision-making process? Did he recuse himself when these discussions were taking place at the cabinet table?
The Prime Minister has a public friendship with the CEO of Telesat, Dan Goldberg. Bazan says the opposition wants to see contract details and the cabinet decision points that led to the Telesat agreement. All of that is covered by cabinet and commercial confidentiality and likely not to be released. One of the last times the opposition fought this kind of battle was 2 years ago, when the Speaker of the House of Commons ruled that Parliament's demand for documents supersedes government secrecy. It was a landmark ruling. The Privy Council office says all of the appropriate conflict of interest screens were in place for the Telesat deal, and Goldberg says Carney played no role in the decision, which was handled by federal officials.
We went through
an absolutely rigorous process.
Goldberg says the Arctic Satellite Network will be operational by 2028. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. 16 degrees now, warmer later. Thanks for joining us live from downtown Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. You're on CBC 89.3 FM. This hour on the show, it is a historic day of sorts in our province. Manitoba's first supervised consumption site will open today here in Winnipeg. How did we get here? Well, it was a long and winding road. We're going to look at the politics of this. We also are going to hear from advocates, health officials, and politicians about how they arrived at this moment of change in our province. We dug into our CBC archives, so stay tuned. We'll have a special report just before 8 o'clock. In addition, high costs of veterinary care continue to be something we do stories about here. Yesterday on the show, we were hearing about that from the Humane Society, more pet owners surrendering their pets because of vet bills. We're going to find out more from a Winnipeg vet about what he would like to see from the government to deal with rising pet care costs and his sense of the problem here. So that's all coming up, that interview right away. Right now, though, Josh Crabb is in with other news stories and updates. Good morning.
Good morning. Manitoba Hydro says it had to reduce the power output at its Brandon natural gas plant during 3 of the past 10 winter peak usage periods. Hydro officials testified about the shortages at public hearings late last month. Critics say this contradicts previous hydro claims. Cleaner energy is too unreliable in the cold. The Manitoba Nurses Union is worried about a ransomware attack affecting doors, heating, and air conditioning at Health Sciences Centre. The hospital has said patients are not affected, but MNU says it's concerned because of previous security incidents at HSC. And accessibility mats are back at Winnipeg Beach to allow people with wheeled mobility devices to enjoy their visit. But an advocate for Manitobans living with disabilities says not enough details are available online about when the mats are not laid out. Your next local CBC News is at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much, Josh.
You're welcome.
Abby, Emmy, what do you know about the weather?
Look outside, lots of sunshine in the downtown area, but at the airport we have a different story there. We still have shallow fog being reported at the airport. Overall, it's going to be a beautiful day settling across the province. Comfortable temperatures to start as we see the clouds develop as we get into the day. Right now in Winnipeg, we're looking at temperatures between 9 at the airport, 16 at the Forks, sunny skies at the Forks, and of course shallow fog at the airport, with clouds increasing later with a high of 25 to end the day. Now across the Pembina Valley region, Westman, Parkland region, similar conditions. It's going to be warm, and we're going to see afternoon highs and the close in the range of the 24s and the 25, featuring just a slim chance of showers. And of course the Westman region has more of a good chance of showers with a risk of thunderstorms moving through the Parkland region as well. Up north, it's more about those light rain falling in the Churchill and the Tuduli Lake region at this point, with highs close to 17 degrees. And for traffic, if you're heading out, just watch out for those construction delays as mentioned. The Louise Bridge, parts of the Henderson Highway, and of course the Pembina Highway ramp. If you see anything out there, just give us a call, 788-3093.
Well, as we've been telling you, for many Canadian pet owners, the pet is part of the family, but the cost to care for those furry kids has many people facing tough decisions. Yesterday, we talked to Carly Peters from the Winnipeg Humane Society. She said they're seeing an increase in pets being surrendered by owners who just can't afford their medical treatments. Last month, she said 150 of the 500 animals that came into care were surrendered.
I mean, it's a concern, and we're seeing it in the numbers, right? We offer the best we can in terms of some low cost vet care options. We have low cost spay and neuter. We have a low cost emergency care program. But we don't have infinite resources. We have other animals in the shelter to take care of, and it's not a sustainable model. While we try and be reactive and help where we can, there needs to be some long-term sustainable solutions for pet owners.
So that's Carly Peters from the Winnipeg Humane Society speaking with us yesterday. And in the news this morning, we're hearing from another pet shelter that is also hearing similar stories about pet owners needing to surrender their animals because of high cost. Now, Jonas Watson is with us, veterinarian here in Winnipeg, owner of the Grant Park Animal Hospital. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy.
What's your sense of this problem and how we're hearing it's increasing and growing for people?
Well, that's distressing to hear. I mean, I think this is always a problem, that there are some people that are not able to afford veterinary care, and that might prompt them to relinquish pets. If this is on the rise, that is further distressing. I know that groups like the Winnipeg Humane Society do a lot of subsidized work and devote, hundreds of thousands of dollars towards that. And it's sad to hear that this problem seems to be on the rise from their perspective.
Some say that their vet bills are too high. So is there something that is causing vet bills to increase overall? What's your sense, just your personal sense, being a veterinarian for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cost of everything is going up, including costs associated with veterinary care. And this has to do with the costs that we face as practice owners in terms of rent and utilities and other things. I think wages for veterinary workers have been on the rise at a more rapid rate than at other times in my career. So we are trying to help appropriately compensate veterinary workers who have maybe not always been adequately compensated. They do very hard work. They're always flirting with burnout, and we're trying to do what we can to at least retain good people in the profession. All of those factors influence the way that we set prices and the rate at which we increase those prices year by year.
What's the what are some of the causes of burnout in your profession since you raised it?
Well, I mean, you can imagine what they are. It's a highly emotionally charged work environment. We're asking a lot of people in a busy practice. There's a lot of multitasking. It's a bit like working in a fast-paced kitchen with multiple burners on all the time. There are emotional lows that need to be contended with. Obviously, you can imagine what those are. People are often, compelled to go above and beyond, put in more time and effort than is even asked of them. Sometimes my practice feels like an animal shelter itself. We have animals dumped and dropped off with us, and then our techs are taking them home, nursing barely living kittens at home, all on their own time. All of this causes a lot of strain, but we do it because we love it. But sometimes it's hard to put up boundaries, appropriate boundaries, to keep ourselves sane. And as a result, people working in the veterinary field struggle with a lot of mental health problems because of that and other reasons. So that's kind of what I'm talking about.
To that end, what should people consider about cost before deciding whether they're going to get a pet?
Well, we want to make sure that we're not sort of telling people, as plainly, if you can't afford a pet, then don't get one. The benefits of pet ownership are immeasurable, and really a society should feel that, everyone who can reasonably afford one ought to be able to have one. But there are real expenses. There are unexpected expenses that can arise. Sometimes those unexpected expenses might be in the thousands of dollars. And so you do need a bit of a plan for that. Beyond just simply paying for dog food every month or cat food every month, you ought to have some sort of plan in place should your German Shepherd tear its ACL ligament, or should, a cat get hit by a car or something. When those things happen, what will you do, and what is your plan for that? Do you have pet insurance? Do you have a separate little bank account set aside? Do you have some one that you can turn to in those situations? If a person cannot reasonably deal with unexpected veterinary expenses, they don't yet have a pet, they should consider whether or not they're going to get one.
I want to ask you about smaller offices being conglomerated and sort of bigger pet care centers opening. When Marketplace nationally looked at this issue last year of higher costs, they were looking at some regions in Canada where there's issues with, I guess you'd call it a monopoly. And so, they would put smaller vet care clinics out of business and some bigger organizations would move in. Is that a trend that is of concern here in Manitoba?
Well, I don't work for a hospital like that, so it's hard for me to comment with any specification about that. But There's no doubt that the corporatization of veterinary medicine is happening, and you do hear rumblings about that impacting the pricing at those hospitals. Presently, probably 50% of the hospitals in Manitoba are owned by a very small number of corporate entities. My hospital is not. And I do think that ownership, based on what I hear out in the world, that ownership structure can impact the way pricing happens at a veterinary hospital.
So would for your type of a practice, would training more vets bring down cost, or how somehow getting more staff in, or what would you like to see to help?
I think, if we've got a section of our population that needs help with veterinary care, and this is an important issue to Manitobans and to our society in general, then I think it's really up to legislators and policymakers to find ways of helping to fund this kind of work. The Humane Society dedicates money to people on fixed incomes, people who need financial assistance. That money comes from donors, but also it might come from, in many cases, it comes from the provincial government and other agencies, perhaps grants that are applied for. And I think that's where the funding should be coming from. Veterinarians we're trying to pay our tax fairly. We're trying to pay our bills, keep the lights on. There's sometimes a bit of a misconception that vets are taking advantage of people. They're not. We're just, we're working hard and we ought to be fairly paid. But in terms of solving this social problem, if it's a priority for us, then we should get creative about finding the resources to direct toward this problem so that people don't have to relinquish their pets.
There was a 2025 poll by Avacus Data that said that 77% of Canadian pet owners support having government rules or regulations, but that would be on fees that vet clinics can charge. What impact would that have on an operation like yours?
Well, there's no secret to the way that we charge our fees. There's a provincial guide for fees, a fee guide that we all use as sort of a baseline. Then we sort of look at our close by competitors' pricing, if we can get that information, and make decisions about pricing based on that. There's sort of a range that is common in the city. Perhaps rurally, it might be a little bit cheaper for a variety of reasons. But, that's how we price. I don't think about anything else besides sort of what everybody else is charging.
Why would it be cheaper rurally? Just because you said a variety of reasons.
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons, but sometimes, in rural practices, they may own the building. They may not have ongoing rent to pay to a landlord. And of course, rents are going to be higher in the city. That would be one example. And I mean, I think sometimes the approach to medicine can be a bit different too. But I think the cost of running the business is often cheaper regionally.
Dr. Watson, thank you for your time. Always love having you on the show talking about animals. So appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Marcy.
That's Jonas Watson with us, veterinarian and owner of the Grant Park Animal Hospital here in Winnipeg.
Feel that? That's the thrill of the Northern Super League. And it's back on CBC Gem, with 6 fierce clubs battling all season long for glory. From coast to coast, Canada's first professional women's soccer league is bringing the heat. For the fans who live for the roar of the crowd, the last-minute winner, and the moments that make sports unforgettable, this is your season. Watch the Northern Super League all season on CBC Gem.
We are going to cover sports in a moment with Claude Fake here on CBC. But first, Carly Rae Jepsen has new music. This is Don't Leave Me on the Dance Floor.
I've been all of your desires. Been a good and been a bad girl. We've been fighting fire with fire. But when our song come and show me your devotion. This is not a guarantee, but I got chance. You got power. I got needs every hour. You're the sweetest part of me. It's the guy who's right for the night, for a lifetime. Say you'll never let me go. Don't leave me on the dance floor. Don't leave me on the dance floor. I'm already falling. I'm falling. Don't leave me in the dark to face another song alone on the dance floor. I need you on the dance floor. The music is calling. I'm falling. Remember how it feels to be the one to take me
Mic drop. She's got the ABBA sound locked, hey? You can hear it all over that. That's Carly Rae Jepsen. She acknowledges that her tunes right now inspired by ABBA's pop melodies. I love that one. Don't Leave Me on the Dance Floor is her latest. Our team seemed to like it too. There were some excellent moves here in the control room. Next on CBC, 7:26 a.m. Good morning, Winnipeg. Let's get into your sports scene and what's happening with Claude Figg, who's in for Scott this morning. Hey, Claude.
Good morning, Marcy.
So, Bombers finally getting their starting quarterback back.
Yeah, that's right. Close to the halfway pole of the CFL season, the Blue Bombers find themselves in the hunt for top spot in the West Division. That despite a 4-4 record and the second least amount of points scored in the league. But that may be about to change with the return of number one pivot Zach Collaros, who's officially off the 6-game injured list and will suit up against the winless Red Blacks on Friday. The 37-year-old two-time Grey Cup winner hasn't played since suffering a neck injury against the Tiger Cats in Week 5. And his coach, Mike O'Shea, certainly more than happy to have his QB back.
Obviously, he's one of the best to play the game. He's got a leadership style about him that everybody appreciates. And on a personal note, not just Zach, but when anybody's hurt and they can't do this thing they really enjoy, there's a bit of grumpiness around the place. Just when they step back on the field, I think there's just a ton of gratitude and joy, and things seem right again.
Now, Collaros, who's missed plenty of time throughout his career due to several injuries, has only played in 4 games this year. It'll be his 5th against the Red Blacks on Friday.
Blue Jays escape with a win over the Red Sox despite a controversial call.
Yeah, Marcy, so it's a tall task for the Jays. They're 3.5 games out of the last AL wildcard spot with 42 games left with 5 teams ahead of them. Now, last night, though, they got off on the right foot, beat the red-hot Boston Red Sox in the first of 4 at the Dome, thanks to a home run from call-up Charles McAdoo and a win from pitcher Simeon Woods Richardson. But the game did have drama in the 7th inning. Red Sox had 2 runners on, first and third, a sac fly to center, and the runners were running before the ball was caught, so the Jays doubled up the runner at first and thinking the inning was over. But not so fast, said Major League Baseball, who chimed in and said that the runner at third who had scored would count even though the Jays had doubled up the guy at first. So the Jays argued, there was a lengthy discussion, and after all that, the run stood, but the Jays won. Here's manager John Schneider.
After consulting with MLB, they told me that all of my players were across the third base line before Charlie waved off the run, which I 100% disagree with. I don't know if Vlad is that fast, but the rule is the rule. And going forward, when that play happens again in the next 100 years, we will record the lead out at third. I'm glad we didn't lose by 1.
And Dylan Cease gets the ball for the Jays tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't lose by one either. That would be a very different conversation this morning. Finally, quarterfinals resume today, for the women and men at the National Bank Open.
That's right, Marcy. In Toronto, the women's quarterfinals will wrap up with four-seeded American Coco Gauff playing Belinda Bencic of Switzerland in one quarter, while the other one will see Elena Rybakina face 11-seeded Naomi Osaka of Japan. On the men's side in Montreal, be a lot busier. All four quarterfinals will be played because rain washed away play last night, and that will include the defending champion Ben Shelton of the U.S. playing Jakub Mensik. There will also be some made-up doubles quarterfinals played today.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, Marcy, have a great day.
You too. That's Cliff Faig with CBC Sports. Small traffic note ahead of news here. Jillian called Monroe westbound and eastbound at Watt. Both directions, you're losing your curb lane due to construction. So 788-3093 is where you reach us on the commuter line. Your CBC News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's clear and 16 downtown. It's 19 in Victoria Beach and 7 in Wasagaming. A Selkirk area man says the province needs to do more to warn people about West Nile virus after he says he tested positive earlier this month. Todd Holmes says shortly after he donated blood, he was called by Canada Blood Services, notifying him that he tested positive for the mosquito-borne illness. He says he's been suffering from a variety of symptoms from extreme chills to crushing fatigue. Holmes believes he was bitten on August 3rd when he was hiking on Hecla Island. He wonders why there is nothing on the province's West Nile site warning of human cases.
As of right now, there's zero in Manitoba, and I have. So, the province needs to move on it. They need to realize that by not telling the public's going to... there's a greater chance of more people getting this, and then we're going to put a greater burden on the medical system.
The province's website says 186 mosquitoes so far have tested positive for West Nile virus, but no human cases. CBC has reached out to the province for a response. Manitoba's first supervised consumption site is set to fully open in Winnipeg today after lengthy delays. The province aimed to open a site in 2025, but pushback against the initially chosen location and other complications caused delays. The NDP government is partnering with the nonprofit agency Aboriginal Health and Wellness to run the site. The site in central Winnipeg has been criticized by some business owners and residents concerned about security, while the opposition Progressive Conservatives have said the government should focus on treatment. A ransomware attack at Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre has affected doors, heating, and air conditioning at Manitoba's largest hospital. The incident occurred 2 years after the province's Auditor General warned Shared Health to beef up cybersecurity. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Shared Health says a ransomware attack at HSC affected maintenance systems, specifically heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and doors. The hospital says patient safety isn't affected. In a memo to staff, it says it's placed additional security at hospital entrances. The Manitoba Nurses Union is concerned. President Darlene Jackson says the union has won grievances about a lack of safety for staff.
It's worrying, especially after the sexual assault in the tunnels that led to the entire safety issue.
The ransomware attack happened 2 years after Auditor General Tyson Stakilo recommended Shared Health improve its cybersecurity. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba Hydro says it had to reduce the power output at its Brandon natural gas plant during 3 of the past 10 winter peak usage periods. Hydro officials testified about the shortages at public hearings late last month. The utility plans to spend $3 billion expanding the Brandon natural gas plant. James Wilt handles policy for the Manitoba Climate Action Team. He says the testimony contradicts previous hydro claims that cleaner energy is too unreliable in the winter.
We've heard hydro critique other resource options, especially wind, for lack of reliability during winter, but we haven't seen the same sort of acknowledgement when it comes to gas-fired power.
Hydro officials say the existing Brandon plant requires maintenance and the expansion will be more reliable. Accessibility mats are back at Winnipeg Beach. A visitor complained the rollout pathways were not in the park in late July. The province says they hadn't been installed because of wave activity, but an advocate for Manitobans living with disability says not enough details are available online about when the mats are not laid out. David Cron is with the Cerebral Palsy Association of Manitoba.
The onus is on the town and on the province to let people know. We should be at a place in 2026 that should be a given, and it shouldn't be the exception to the rule.
The province says visitors can call the local park office for information on mat availability. Cron says those details should be reflected on the Manitoba Parks website. And Winnipeg Animal Rescue says it's seen about 200 surrenders so far this year due to pet care costs. Carla Martinelli-Irvin with Winnipeg Pet Rescue Shelter says the main reason is because some people cannot afford veterinary care. She says the high costs of living are forcing some pet owners to make tough decisions.
You know, the cost of everything, groceries, everything. People are struggling. People that were medium income and living fairly well a couple of years ago are starting to count the groceries and look at their bills. You know, I think life has changed for almost every Canadian.
Last month, the Winnipeg Humane Society also saw 150 owner surrenders. They say the majority of those were because of pet care costs. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
Josh Crabb is in for Heather Wells all this week. From our CBC Winnipeg News Centre, you're listening to Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, and the sun is making a bit of an appearance. We're actually going to have mostly a cloudy day, though, right, Abby?
Yeah, that's correct, Marcy. We're looking at more like a beautiful summer day for most of the regions, especially here in southern Manitoba, where we're really enjoying lots of sunshine to start. And we will see highs in the mid-20s. But if you look up north, it's more about temperatures just climbing into the mid-teens today. Here for the Red River Valley, the Pembina Valley, the Westman, Parkland, Interlake region, we're seeing the region starting off with mostly sunny conditions, though some few spots waking up to shallow fog like at the airport here in Winnipeg, with current temperatures there at 9 degrees, and most of the regions we're seeing temperatures close to 16 degrees right now. All these areas will see highs climb close to 25 degrees, except for the Parkland region, where we're looking at temperatures just getting close to 21, and there's a risk of thunderstorms in that part of the province later this afternoon. That will be coming with the showers expected across the north central region. From the powerful Flanoe House, Thompson, Lynn Lake, we're seeing morning temperatures between 11 and 13 right now. We're looking at a mix of sun and clouds today. Highs will be between 16 and 22 degrees, and expect a breezy afternoon with a slim chance of showers popping up here and there. For the Gillam to the Lake and Churchill region, it's more like cooler conditions and cloudy day. We're seeing temperatures hovering around 11 to 13 degrees at this time, just aiming for a high of 17. Also slim chance of showers and a risk of afternoon thunder shower in that region. But for Winnipeg, we are sitting at 9 at the airport with some shallow fog reported, and of course at the Forks we see 16 there. Sunny conditions at the downtown area. Expect some clouds to roll in later. Then we get to 25 later. Talking about construction, just slow down across the main route where you know constructions will be happening in your neighborhood. Looking at northbound Pembina, the highway ramp to westbound Abanoji-Makina is going to be closed today, so find an alternate route. Now, while lane restrictions are going to be there, we also look at the Anderson Highway. There's construction there. If you go towards Monroe and Watts, the westbound and eastbound lane, we got both directions really losing curb lanes there due to the construction happening in that part. Also, the Lois Bridge remains fully closed up until August 16th. So there's a lot going on in the city. You see anything, just give us a call, 788-3093.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, a small correction to something I mentioned in the last hour. I was talking about a Manitoban who is in BC now, former Manitoban, and now lives in British Columbia. But we had interviewed him on CBC because he has been evacuated from a community because of wildfires. I had said that he was evacuated from Penticton and then Summerland, and it's actually the opposite. So Summerland was evacuated first, of course, due to the wildfires in that area of BC. If you want to hear more of that story, he was on Up to Speed yesterday. You can always find any of our radio shows and items on your CBC Listen app. 22 minutes to 8 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. And next on the show, when it comes to the West Coast oil pipeline, Alberta is now saying it wants shovels in the ground by next fall. But the Union of BC Indian Chiefs wants the province and the federal government to put those shovels down. The proposed pipeline has been on the table since Ottawa and Alberta signed a memorandum of understanding in November. But the idea has faced opposition from the get-go. And now an open letter from the BC Chiefs to Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Daniel Smith calls on both levels of government to halt efforts to advance the project. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip is the president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, which represents 140 First Nations in British Columbia. He spoke with As It Happens guest host Saroja Coelho on why this is important to write the letter now.
We issued a letter in the midst of this climate crisis disaster that's unfolding not only in British Columbia but right across Canada. We believe that Canada is burning, Europe is burning, the UK is burning in unprecedented firestorms that are costing thousands of lives, and this trajectory will continue to intensify, and it's directly a consequence of the existing and expanding oil and gas industry, and we need to come to our senses and stop this insanity with oil and gas to save our countries, our communities, and our families.
As you released this letter, the Federal Major Projects Office is currently reviewing Alberta's proposal. They committed to consulting Indigenous communities. Do you have confidence in that process?
No, absolutely not. We've had a number of pipeline wars here in British Columbia, which were sponsored and supported by the vast majority of First Nations, as well as the environmental community, human rights groups, and ordinary citizens. The Government of Canada, as far back as Bill C-5, the Build Canada Act, and here in British Columbia, Bills 14 and 15, to fast-track energy projects, infrastructure projects, there was no credible or substantive consultation with First Nations, who are the title holders, and we are serving notice on Prime Minister Carney, the Premier of Alberta, and David Eby, that we have to stop this mindless expansion of the fossil fuel industry. I have a wildfire in Penticton, where I live. It's come on to our reserve land base. My son and his son, my grandson Marcus, are out on the fire line as we speak in an effort to defend our reservation community and the lives of the people therein. This is real, and governments have got to wake up.
So that was Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, the president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. He was on As It Happens on CBC last night, talking about the West Coast oil pipeline proposal. More national and international news coming up at 8 here. Right now it is 7:43 a.m. You're on CBC live from downtown Winnipeg. And local singer-songwriter Chris Ulrich blends intimate songwriting, if you've heard Chris before, with a kind of a modern indie sound. If you have not yet heard Chris, she takes the outdoor stage at Assiniboine Park's Lyric Theatre on Thursday. Hopefully the weather will hold out. Here's Ulrich with Friends on the Internet.
Spot if you wanna walk there, maybe that's as far as we'll get.
Well, there's a little enticement for you to check out Assiniboine Park Conservancy's summer concert series at the Lyric. You can check out on stage Chris Elrich. He will be on stage on Thursday, and that is July 5th through August 30th. That's the full run for the summer series, but he's on this week from 7 to 9 o'clock.
I'm Michelle McDougall, your local reporter for CBC Manitoba in Brandon. You're listening to CBC Radio 1.
With Manitoba's first supervised consumption site set to open today in Winnipeg, we thought this morning we'd take a look back at how we got here. So we dug into our CBC archives. Discourse around supervised consumption sites in our city really began to heat up in 2017. Back then, fentanyl, carfentanil, and meth were a growing problem on Winnipeg streets. So that's the starting point for our report. And CBC's Corey Funk is here to guide us. Good morning.
Good morning.
So why 2017?
Yeah, so 2017, that's when we started to really get a sense of what public opinion was like. So a poll at the time, it actually found that 46% of Winnipeggers supported the creation of a supervised consumption site. Brian Bowman was mayor at the time, and after the poll came out, he said that opening a site was not a priority. And then later that same year in 2017, Bear Clan co-founder James Favel joined CBC's Ismaila Alfon up to speed after finding hundreds of needles in just 2 abandoned buildings in Winnipeg's North End.
When you see something like that, that number of needles in one area, what do you say? Well, what do you think that says about Winnipeg's drug scene?
Well, I mean, it definitely highlights the fact that there is a problem here, and that we need to find better solutions. There's something more needs to be done. Yeah.
What is the root cause to this problem?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it goes back to poverty. I mean, there's so much that goes into, being in such abject poverty that, that there's no hope. People give up. They start doing self-medicating, committing crimes. Yeah.
There's been an on-again, off-again conversation over safe injection sites here. What's your opinion on that?
I'm not for IV drug use, but I am for safe injection sites. We have lost several community members over the last couple of years because we don't have those kinds of things in place. And I say that if you can save a life, then spend the money. Just do that. That's the right thing to do if you can save a life.
So you can tell public opinion, kind of starting to shift there. And if you will notice, Marcy, the terms that have changed too. Safe injection site has been replaced now with supervised consumption site.
Okay, so let's go down our path here in time. The next point here in our city is May 2018, and that's when the idea of establishing a supervised consumption site becomes a political flashpoint.
That's right. So that's because a report by Dr. Brian Rush, known as the Virgo Report, was released. It was this deep dive into the treatment of mental health and addictions in our province, and the release didn't go as planned. The version of the report that was sent to media contained a recommendation for a supervised consumption site in Winnipeg, but it was actually removed from a later version. So it's worth noting that the Progressive Conservative government at the time did not support establishing a supervised consumption site. So here's Health Minister Kelvin Gertson after he was grilled on the omission in Dr. Rush's report.
Who took it out then?
I assume he did. It's his report.
Did any of your officials recommend to him to take it out? Anybody in government at all? Any of your officials?
Not that I'm aware of. I do know that there are discussions that always happen between officials and the drafters of a report. But I'm sure you can ask him if why he took it out, and he's still in Winnipeg, I believe.
So CBC did talk to Dr. Rush later that day. Here's what he had to say.
Only that a report of that size goes through how many revisions? And at the end of the day, the last edit that I made, there was other things changed as well. And I sat in my office and I looked at that and said, I don't have enough. I didn't have enough to defend it one way or the other. Besides my personal conviction that those resources are really helpful. In this context here, I didn't have enough information. I didn't have the data. I didn't have previous proposals. I didn't have background stuff. What I had was a lot of support from the Harm Reduction Network that really led me to some of those other recommendations around the naloxone distribution, the syringe, et cetera. So yeah, you put in there, okay, like let's put the safe injection site in, and at the end of the day, I took it out.
Did anybody from government ask you to remove that?
No.
So at this point, then, Corey, as you heard the doctor saying, he felt we didn't have enough to make an official recommendation to set up a consumption site, and we're lacking data. So what happened next?
Well, the meth crisis got worse, and Mayor Brian Bowman actually eventually softened the idea of opening a supervised consumption site after hearing from families of people who died from overdoses. It became actually an election issue in 2018. During a mayoral debate that September, Bowman said actually he wouldn't rule it out, even if the province wasn't on board.
I don't believe that we should be taking a partisan or ideological lens. I think we need to keep all options open. And so I've been in close dialogue with the Main Street Project and many other organizations. And what the families are telling me is don't rule anything out.
And a month later, actually on the day of the municipal election here in Winnipeg, an internal document obtained by the NDP showed the number of people seeking help for meth use at publicly funded centres increased 700% since 2012. This is Wab Canoe when he was NDP opposition leader at the time, talking about it.
It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all the problems that we're having with drugs in our city. But if you have a chance to reduce HIV transmission, ensure that there's less needles in the street, and maybe refer somebody to treatment who's using meth, to me, that sounds like a pretty good reason for having a safe injection site.
So Mayor Brian Bowman actually ended up winning a second term that night, but without interest from the province. He never managed to open a supervised consumption site during his time as mayor. And Bowman actually chalked it up to the Pallister government's ideology.
Yeah, I think it's partisan. It's the facts should matter, and in in this day and age in politics, we see a lot of politicians making decisions without having all the facts or considering the facts.
You're live on CBC with Corey Funk today, and it's an important day because Winnipeg's first safe consumption site is going to be opening. And so we're looking back in our archives to see how we got here. Now, we just heard Mayor Brian Bowman there. We're back in 2018. He was reelected. He was talking about the province and their position at the time on safe consumption sites. Throughout his tenure, then Premier Brian Pallister really held firm that Winnipeg should not have a supervised consumption site.
That's right. His position is he instead preferred to focus on funding treatment and recovery options for drug users. Pallister also said that the nature of drug use in Winnipeg would make running a site particularly challenging.
We can't just make available in Winnipeg a site, because our drug users are using everywhere. They're using in parks, they're using in the north end, the west end, the east end, they're using in their own homes, right? Winnipeg is not the same as Vancouver, where there's a concentrated area of users, the same as Toronto, where there's a concentrated area of users. So setting up an injection site specific to Winnipeg might mean half a dozen sites because of the fact that there are people all over the city using. It's a different deal than other cities.
Now, fast forward to April 2019, a study from several health organizations in Manitoba, including the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, it came out and it surveyed drug users and found 80% of them said they are likely to use a safe consumption site or a supervised consumption site if it was available. So Joss Reimer was the WRHA Medical Officer of Health, specializing in substance use at the time, and said evidence for supervised consumption site was overall actually very good.
So some of that data we were waiting to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Starting to see more, scientific
Health
backing
officials,
for it.
yep.
Exactly. But then less than a year later, of course, the pandemic hit, and politicians and health officials were forced to shift their focus, putting a talk of supervised consumption site on the back burner as the drug crisis still kept deepening, of course. So calls for supervised consumption sites continued, but nothing really happened until 2023 when the NDP took power here in Manitoba.
Now, that's still 3 years ago, though. It took 3 years to get to today.
That's right. And people might recall that funding was announced pretty soon after they took power, but finding a suitable location was the big challenge. 200 Disraeli Freeway ran into opposition from local residents who felt there was not enough consultation and that the location was too close to schools, a childcare center, some homes. So the province pivoted pretty quickly after announcing that and opened and announced that they're going to open at 366 Henry Avenue today. But there are still concerns. Kelly Miranda manages Pampanga Restaurant and Banquet Hall across the street from where it's set to open.
To be honest, I'm not really a fan of it just because of where we're already located and what's around us. Just having that and what we have right now, I just don't think that would be a great mesh. And there's a school over there, like right across the building. And with the struggles that I already deal with day to day, I just don't think it would work.
So she's echoing some of the concerns actually that came up with the first proposed site.
Yeah, totally. But of course, despite those concerns, it is still set to open. So the final word today, though, goes to Housing Addictions and Homelessness Minister Bernadette Smith, who said after residents and business owners raised their concerns at a consultation meeting this past December, here's what she had to say.
Safety and security is our number one priority. We want to make sure that, businesses are well serviced. Policing, said that they are committed to making sure that they will have a good response time if there is a need for that. But more importantly, Downtown Community Safety Patrol talked about their services and providing, wellness checks for people, safe rides. There's also going to be community wellness workers to make sure that there's cleanup around and that there aren't people loitering around, and people aren't going to be leaving there under a state where they're a danger to themselves or others. This is where the data tells us that the supervised consumption needs to be, because the majority of overdoses have happened in this area. Winnipeg Fire paramedics, police, frontline organizations are telling us through the data that it needs to be in this area.
It's a lot of promises the province has made about how it's going to go. Today it opens. We'll see how things progress. Thank you very much for bringing in the backstory.
Thank you.
So that's CBC's Corey Funk, who looked into our archives to bring us up to today, where the new supervised consumption site will open at 366 Henry. It is set to be open Tuesdays to Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 6:45. Advocates, though, are already pushing for those hours to be extended. You can follow our continuing coverage at cbc.ca/Manitoba. 3 minutes to 8 o'clock, 16 degrees in Winnipeg, the high 25, increasing cloud today. Still ahead on the program after 8. The province says accessibility at Winnipeg Beach is dependent on shoreline conditions. We heard from a Manitoba woman yesterday who struggled to access the beach and the surrounding areas. We're going to talk more about what it takes to make beach areas accessible. So that's after 8. Also, we're going to hear more from Shared Health, and that's related to a story you're about to hear in headlines regarding Health Sciences Centre. So Josh Crabb is here to bring us up to date. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Marcy. A ransomware attack, as you mentioned, at Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre has affected doors, heating, and air conditioning at Manitoba's largest hospital. And this comes 2 years after the Auditor General warned Shared Health to beef up cybersecurity. A Selkirk area man says he was told after donating blood that he's tested positive for West Nile virus after hiking on Hecla Island. The mosquito-borne virus can cause severe illness. The man is calling on the province to do more to alert the public about the risks. And a Winnipeg animal shelter is seeing more people surrender dogs for cost-related reasons than ever before. The Winnipeg Pet Rescue Shelter has seen 200 such cases this year. Your next local CBC News is at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
So our interview on what happened at HSC is actually with a cybersecurity expert. So we'll have a full get into some of the details about what the risks are when there are ransomware attacks like this on hospitals specifically. So stay tuned. That's after 8, right here on Information Radio. A couple of traffic things to be aware of as we head up to 8 o'clock here. Monroe, westbound, eastbound at Watt, both directions, you lose the curb lane. Louise Bridge remains closed. Henderson Highway around Springfield Road, part of that is closed for street construction as well. And then Abinogi-Mi'kmaq, Pembina northbound ramp to westbound Abinogi-Mi'kmaq is also closed just for today. 788-3093 if you are on a morning commute, or maybe you're on holidays and you're heading out of town. What's the highway like? If there's any problems out there, you can pass them along to our commuter line at 788-3093. Stay with us. Road Report's next on CBC.
Today on Q. Candy Staten has been a gospel prodigy, a Southern soul powerhouse, and a disco icon. Now now 86, she's back with her Grammy-nominated album Back to My Roots. She'll be here to talk about faith, resilience, and still singing after 7 decades.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm JP Tasker. The small northern BC town of Dawson Creek is hijacked by a wave of drug-fueled violence. The CBC's Fifth Estate and CBC podcast spent 2 years digging into this story. We'll talk about who's behind the violence. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We begin in Western Colombia. Search teams use excavators, shovels, and their bare hands to move the rubble from a collapsed building in Cali. It is one of several cities damaged by yesterday's magnitude 7.4 earthquake. Local authorities say 220 people at least are now dead, and that number will likely continue to rise. Search and rescue crews worked overnight. Officials have been trying to keep people off the streets after sundown.
Tenemos amenazas de saqueo. Por eso he ordenado el toque de queda y la militarización de Cali.
Cali Mayor Alejandro Eder says troops have been deployed to his city and a curfew has been issued to discourage looting. The disaster is a major challenge for Colombia's national government. The country's president, Alejandro de la Espriella, was sworn in just days ago. Typhoon Dolphin is churning inland towards central China. People make their way through the flooded streets of Hubei province. It is home to more than 58 million people. Alerts for severe flooding and landslides were issued about 1,000 kilometers to the north in the capital. Beijing will be getting more rain. It's expected to receive over 1/3 of its annual rainfall in the next 24 hours. That's more than 150 millimeters of rain in a day. Temperature records are being broken in Europe. Another heat wave is now settling over western parts of the continent. Almost 3/4 of England is now in drought. It is one of the many countries dealing with prolonged heat and a lack of rain. Around 27 million people are living with water restrictions. It is the 5th heat wave to hang over Britain this year. The dry heat has also fueled wildfires across several countries, including Italy, France, and Spain. There are heightened concerns in Spain about the prolonged heat. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to gather in northern Spain for tomorrow's solar eclipse. More than 100 wildfires are tearing through parts of British Columbia. In BC's Okanagan region, thousands of people have been displaced. Some people want to get back to their communities as soon as they can, but there is a lot of cleaning up to do before that's possible. The CBC's Michelle Allen reports.
Through the smoke, water bombers unload on the Bald Range fire. Crews are working overnight as dry conditions fuel the flames near Summerland. But so much is burning, evacuees are not able to return home.
It's not a time right now to be able to go back to the community. It is not safe at this time.
Graham Statt is the Regional Emergency Operations Center Director. At an update last evening, Summerland officials say they will start triaging requests from people who want to temporarily return to evacuation zones. But if evacuees are allowed in, it will be temporary. Summerland Mayor Doug Holmes says what evacuees find may be difficult to take in.
When we do get back, we need to brace ourselves for what's there or what's not there. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard.
Police say they aren't aware of any new fatalities. Over the weekend, an 80-year-old woman from Meadow Valley died while trying to flee with her family. The Bald Range fire now burns over 15,000 hectares. It's one of multiple wildfires ripping through BC's interior. Over 21,000 people throughout the province are under evacuation orders, including the entirety of Summerland. Michelle Allen, CBC News, Vancouver.
One community is trying to recover. 2 years ago, the Jasper wildfire destroyed 1/3 of the town site, including hundreds of hotel rooms. It was an economic blow. The community depends on tourism. The summer season alone generates 80% of local revenue. As the CBC's Maggie Kirk reports, every visitor and every dollar counts.
So far this summer, we've actually seen really good momentum.
The crowds of tourists are back in Jasper. Tyler Riopel is the CEO of Tourism Jasper, and he says international visitors are returning in high numbers, which is good because...
So international visitors spend anywhere from 3 to 5 times more than what a domestic visitor might spend.
Higher hotel prices are also driving up spending. With fewer rooms available, nightly rates have climbed. Evil Dave's Grill owner Mike Day says it's bringing in customers with a higher disposable income.
So the check average is higher, serving higher end items, nicer bottles of wine.
But with fewer hotels available, that also means less foot traffic, which hurts retail stores and tour operators. Local leaders say a full economic recovery could take up to 10 years. But with hundreds of local beds anticipated to return next summer, Jasper's economy is on an upward trajectory. Maggie Kirk, CBC News, Jasper, Alberta.
In Ukraine's capital, crews work to put out a fire after a Russian ballistic attack in Kyiv. It's one of several cities recovering from overnight missile and drone strikes. At least 9 people are dead. Several others are injured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of using North Korean missiles to carry out the attack. He says it was meant to inflict maximum damage on civilian infrastructure. Zelensky is warning other nations about North Korea's growing involvement in the war and the potential danger it poses to them. Russia's defense ministry confirms it carried out overnight strikes. It says it targeted military-related transport and logistics centers. The former president of Syria has been sentenced to death in absentia. A Syrian court convicted Bashar al-Assad of murder for crimes committed during the country's 14-year civil war. Assad and his family fled to Russia 2 years ago. He's been living there in exile ever since. One of Assad's top officials, his maternal cousin Atef Najib, was not able to evade capture. He is being held in Syria and has also been sentenced to death. Federal conservatives are raising concerns of possible conflict of interest in military satellite contract in one. Ottawa announced the $2.6 billion deal with Telesat last week. Prime Minister Mark Carney knows its CEO personally. As CBC's Murray Brewster explains, the project, meant to help Canada monitor its far north, is prompting questions about transparency.
This is about a matter of trust and transparency.
Conservative defense critic James Bazan, who says the government has some explaining to do about its decision to hand the multi-billion-dollar satellite contract to Telesat.
Was Prime Minister Carney involved in the decision-making process? Did he recuse himself when these discussions were taking place at the cabinet table?
The Prime Minister has a public friendship with the CEO of Telesat, Dan Goldberg. Bazan says the opposition wants to see contract details and the cabinet decision points that led to the Telesat agreement. All of that is covered by cabinet and commercial confidentiality and likely not to be released. One of the last times the opposition fought this kind of battle was 2 years ago, when the Speaker of the House of Commons ruled that Parliament's demand for documents supersedes government secrecy. It was a landmark ruling. The Privy Council office says all of the appropriate conflict of interest screens were in place for the Telesat deal, and Goldberg says Carney played no role in the decision, which was handled by federal officials.
We went through an absolutely rigorous process.
Goldberg says the Arctic Satellite Network will be operational by 2028. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Electric scooters and bikes are becoming more common on Canadian roads. There are concerns about the number of children using them. Some Quebec doctors say stricter regulations are needed. The CBC's Sarah Levitt reports.
We are seeing a continuous rise in the past few years of the amount of injuries that we're seeing coming into our emergency department.
As trauma coordinator at the Montreal Children's Hospital, Leanne Franzblow says she's seen the gamut of injuries related to kids using electric bikes or scooters.
Most of them lose control, go forwards over the e-scooter, face first or head first into the ground, so they'll breaking thumbs, wrists, facial fractures, head injuries, brain injuries.
Franzblow and her colleagues have written an open letter calling on the Quebec government to increase the age limit for users from 14 to 16. They also want to see helmets be made mandatory.
We're concerned that they don't understand the real scope of what's happening from our perspective.
Quebec's Ministry of Transport says there are no plans to change its regulations. Most provinces have the age limit set at 16. Nova Scotia, though, is changing its rules. Starting in the fall, the age limit to ride the scooters or bikes there will be 14. Fred Tilley is the Public Works Minister for Nova Scotia.
They can go up to 30, 32 kilometers an hour and more. So you start to get into a different level of conveyance than a traditional bicycle or cycle.
In Montreal, Franz Blow says there also has to be an awareness of the dangers by both the parents and the children riding the bikes or scooters. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. How's your Tuesday so far? Thanks for being with us today on Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. This is CBC. Well, this hour on the show, we're going to hear more about what you may have started to hear about in the news this morning. There was a ransomware attack on Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre. So the incident affected the hospital's door access, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. It's prompted an investigation by Shared Health. We're going to talk to a cybersecurity expert this half hour to talk about the impact on ransomware attacks overall at hospitals and why people would target a hospital. In addition, this hour on the show, the province says accessibility at Winnipeg Beach is dependent on shoreline conditions after a Manitoba woman shared her experience struggling to access the beach and surrounding area.
We walked to the beach and looking for the mats to go down to the thing. There was none.
Coming up, we'll talk about what it takes to make a beach more accessible. It is 8:11 a.m. right now, and Josh Crabb is here to talk about other headlines.
Good morning. A Selkirk area man says the province needs to do more to warn people about West Nile virus after he says he tested positive earlier this month. Todd Holmes says shortly after he donated blood, he was told he had tested positive for the mosquito-borne virus that can cause severe illness. Critics of Manitoba Hydro's plans to burn more fossil fuels have some fuel of their own from the Crown Corporation. During public hearings late last month, Hydro officials testified that their Brandon natural gas plant had to run below capacity during 3 of the past 10 winter peak use periods. And Manitoba's Columbian community is supporting each other in the wake of a devastating earthquake in their home country. Your next local CBC News is at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
With a look at our weather and traffic, here's Abby.
Yeah, southern regions warming to the low mid-20s, while up north we're seeing more like cool conditions with a few showers spotted there. For Winnipeg right now, it is now 18 degrees at the Forks. We will see some clouds building the city as we head to a high of 25 today, and then more cloudy conditions as we cool over to 14 degrees later in the evening. Up north, we're looking at 11s to 14 degrees, and highs would range from 13 to 18. But for Winnipeg, we're at 18 right now. We'll build to 25 later. Overall, it's going to be a cool day across board. And on the roads, just look out for those construction spots we talked about, the Louise Bridge, and of course the Pembina Highway ramp westbound to Bano Jamaica is closed only for today. And also on Anderson Highway and Monroe and Watt, you will definitely encounter slow traffic in that area. You see anything, let us know. 788-3093.
Well, to set up our first interview this half hour, let's now hear more from Janine Pokrant, who is a wheelchair user. And she says she chose to visit Winnipeg Beach because it's on Manitoba's list of accessible beaches. We heard a full interview with her yesterday. In case you missed it, here's part of what she experienced.
We walked to the beach and looking for the mats to go down to the thing. There was none. So after we walked from one end to the next, we thought, okay, well, we can't go to the water. Let's go for something to eat and go look in the stores. Well, we crossed the street. The street was bumpy, asphalt missing everywhere. We get up onto the sidewalk, and none of the stores you couldn't really go in were accessible. Then we got to this one, and we went to go down the ramp, and I'm like, I can't make this ramp. It's not even connected to the sidewalk. There's no bolts.
The province said they took away the mobility mats installed at Winnipeg Beach because of significant wave action. But then late Friday, a spokesperson for the province sent an update to CBC saying mobility mats are back in place at Winnipeg Beach. But their availability can fluctuate depending on lake conditions and water levels. At times, Manitoba Park staff may be required to remove the mats when shoreline conditions do not allow for their use. And that is a quote. To talk more about what it takes to make a beach accessible for all and hopefully make that consistent for folks, Tanel Bolt is with us, president and founder of the Rad Recreation Adapted Society. This is a charity that provides access to adaptive recreation equipment and an access and design consultant in British Columbia. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what is your experience addressing, accessibility issues that are specific to beaches?
It's hard. There's a lot of people and moving parts involved, and like this Janine had experienced, it is often comes, accessibility is at the bottom of the barrel underneath of cost and maintenance.
And as part of what makes it hard, like we heard yesterday that there can be gaps. So Janine uses a wheelchair, and a whole bunch of people were writing to CBC, and some people were saying they appreciate the efforts, but sometimes they'll be able to roll down to see the water, but then it turns to all sand, and then you can't go all the way to the water. What are the challenges that make it difficult beyond the will to put these things in place?
Environment, like the town says, they've taken it out because there's waves and water, and it could be tumultuous and it gets pulled out. Maybe they don't use long enough stakes. Some of our beaches, a lot of our beaches on the West Coast are very rocky and very difficult to overcome. However, we have docks for boats that are built into the water that they maintain all the time, and pedestrian pathways for other individuals that are maintained all the time. And I would say that when these mats are removed, shake them off and lay them back down, maintain them. I know that Winnipeg Beach has staff consistently down there for safety, so let's consider accessibility part of safety.
How did you get into this type of work? And I know I'm a bit of it's a personal reason, correct?
It is a very personal reason. 12 years ago yesterday, I broke my back in a recreation accident, and I became a full-time manual wheelchair user, paralyzed from the chest down.
It's interesting because Janine herself, this is her very first wheelchair, and she had worked as a healthcare aide and said she'd been aware of some accessibility issues through her work, but it's a very different thing, she said, when you're out there trying to get to places. Tell me a bit about creating an accessible kayak launch where you are. How does it work?
So through consulting, I'm an interior designer by trade, and when I hurt myself at 27, I didn't know that I was building barriers into the world around me. So I've been backpedaling for 12 years, and Elk Lake here on Vancouver Island in Victoria is a lake that many boaters and rowers and recreation enthusiasts like to use. And the Capital Regional District is a region out here that I have been doing sub-consulting for the last 3 years on multiple different projects in working towards gaining better access like this. The kayak launch that's at Elk Lake is a purpose-built, stable launch system that anybody with mobility limitations, balance issues, children, grandparents, we can all now get in our boats on a solid bottom and be able to push ourselves out into the lake independently without being at the hands of so many assistants and volunteers. It keeps us clean and dry and no sandy bottoms.
I want to ask a bit about the mats. You were talking about, pay attention to them, shake them off, put them back. What about keeping them down? The province of Manitoba talks about significant wave action on the lake here that's in question, Lake Winnipeg, regularly shifting those mobility mats and pulling them up. Is that a common issue?
Again, it's water. Water will disintegrate concrete if it's given enough time. So maintenance is the biggest thing, and ingenuity. If they give you stakes that are a foot long, go get some stakes made that are 3 feet long and let's try again. This mat is not going to dissolve in the water. It is specific to go all the way into the water. Like Janine said, it's very difficult in other users to actually be a wheelchair user and touch the water, which is a healing property that we have very limited access to. So using your brains, get an engineer involved, ask them. Don't just say, we tried one way and it didn't work, so we're done.
Winnipeg Beach remains in the province's list of accessible beaches, but now the province says the mats may not always be out depending on shoreline conditions. We have local people here critical of the communication around what is accessible. What's your sense of that when you think about people that are just trying to live their lives and they need accessibility?
Communication is key. Be honest and be up to date. So I looked at the list of 18 beaches in Manitoba that are accessible. There's not one photo, there's not one video attached to this list. There is no communication about the fact that the reasons why the mats come and go willy-nilly in the summertime when they should be out always. And communication is number one. We understand things happen. But if you're just removing them and not telling anybody and not putting it out there, not being forthcoming with what the experience is, they say there's accessible parking, they say there's accessible bathrooms, but are they truly accessible? This is before we even get out of the parking lot.
Really appreciate you weighing in, Tanel, and being on our program in Manitoba this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. And anybody that wants to reach out, radsociety.ca, I'm happy to answer questions and help where I can.
Appreciate that. Live on Zoom with us this morning at 8:21, that's Tanel Bolt, an access and design consultant and founder of Rad Recreation Adapted Society. Now, CBC did reach out to Winnipeg Beach. We now have a comment. Mayor Terry Kaloff responded with a statement, we have a statement. Quote, we're aware of the concerns that have been raised regarding accessibility along Main Street, including the condition of portions of the sidewalks, gaps between the ramps and available space around patio areas. We take the concerns seriously and will be looking into specific issues that have been brought forward, end quote. But it goes on to read, quote, improving accessibility throughout Winnipeg Beach will be a process. The town is committed to working with the province and other partners to identify opportunities to improve accessibility within our community's infrastructure. It includes looking at sidewalks, crossings, access points, and other public spaces through an accessibility and age-friendly lens. As the budget for 2026 has already been established, some larger infrastructure improvements will take time and will need to be considered through future budgeting and planning processes. In Manitoba, we have an Accessibility for Manitobans Act. It's legislation that passed to have accessible places for us, businesses for all of us. And some critics have said that it doesn't have enough teeth. So we'll continue to stay on this story. If you want to weigh in, 788-3205.
Manitoba is a conversation that never stops. From your first coffee with information radio to the midday pulse of Radio Noon and the drive home with Up to Speed. Don't let your day get in the way of your favorite shows. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Bring your community with you. Download the CBC News app and stay live with us.
Well, if you're on the CBC News app as of this morning, you're going to see that Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre is dealing with a ransomware attack. So this attack, as you've heard in the news, had affected door access, heating, and air conditioning at Manitoba's largest hospital. In a statement, Shared Health has said that, quote, patient care and clinical operations remain unaffected and fully operational. It also says it's launched an investigation to determine the nature and scope of the attack. But Darlene Jackson, president of the Manitoba Nurses Union, told CBC that the loss of control at the entrances is of concern because of the number of violent incidents at HSC in recent years.
It's worrying for staff because if doors are not secure, then you can have individuals just walking into doors without anyone knowing they're in the building.
So how common are ransomware attacks of the nature of this one? It's part of what our next guest is here to talk about. Mark Petot is a local cybersecurity expert. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with why someone would want to attack a hospital with this kind of an attack?
Typically, ransomware is essentially extortion, right? So they're
the malicious actors are basically looking for some sort of leverage over the organization that they're attacking. So hospitals having sensitive material in terms of personal information, industrial control systems like the hospital systems, which are being attacked right now, like HVAC systems, doors, security, that type of thing, are also that form of leverage that they can basically take that over, and then they can request a ransom payout, because they essentially have that control over the hospital.
Is it common that there be a ransomware attack at a hospital?
There have been quite a few, I would say, in the last, 3 to 5 years. Definitely hospitals even larger than Health Sciences Center have seen similar types of attacks, yes.
How concerned should the public be?
So, ultimately, in this case, because it's building control systems, it's a little bit less, I guess, affecting to the individual. Whereas if it was, a breach of confidential data or personally identifiable information, that would definitely be more concerning to individuals. Based on kind of the interview that you had done with the nursing union manager, I would say that those are definitely some legitimate concerns in terms of door security and safety for the public being there. I would say for the employees as well. That definitely is something that needs to be considered. Obviously, operationalizing security staff to be at every single door is not possible, so that's definitely difficult. But I would definitely say even the control over the HVAC systems like air conditioning and that type of thing could pose a problem, because they could arguably change the temperature in operating rooms, treatment rooms, waiting rooms, which I know right now it's not terribly warm out like it was, say a few weeks ago, but it still could cause a lot of problems, I would imagine, in terms of that environmental control.
Who are the people behind these kinds of attacks?
Typically, they're one of a couple different things. So there's a lot of we'll call them ransomware as a service groups or groups that specifically use ransomware to extort organizations. They are typically overseas, like they're not usually located in Canada or the US, for example. And then there's the other side of it where there's nation state actors, which are essentially hacking groups that are employed by their country's government to try to take over systems in other countries as a form of kind of like a political type of cyber war type of thing. So I think it's probably more likely that it's like the ransomware as a service type of organizations where it's just typical crime. But it's hard to tell unless they find some indicator of compromise based on the attack that is linked to a specific threat group, which is often the case.
And what do you do to respond to something like this?
So typically what you want to do is not pay the ransom, obviously, unless you know that you have lost control completely and you don't have backups or you don't have a way of recovering. So usually trying to recover the systems either with your own staff that are there or with the help of a third-party security firm. Those are usually the routes that most organizations go to start with, is to try to recover on their own. Because I don't know about anyone else, but I wouldn't trust criminals to, restore our systems if you pay the ransom, right? So you're taking a pretty big risk by paying the ransom and hoping that they're actually going to relinquish control.
And what questions should HSC and the province be asking about how this happened to try to prevent it from happening again?
So typically, building controls or industrial control systems are usually very secured and isolated from other parts of the network. And because, unfortunately, a lot of these systems require vendor access, oftentimes a lot of these types of breaches aren't necessarily because of the security controls of the organization, so Health Sciences Center in this case, but a lot of the times they're actually the third party has become breached, and now the malicious actors now have access to, potentially Health Sciences Center or other in environments that company manages. So ultimately looking at their third-party security and ensuring that organization, if they have control over some of these systems, is being reviewed time to time. I would say at least once or twice a year. And then also doing penetration testing or red teaming exercises, which tests the security of these systems, is another thing that should be done at least once or twice a year by default.
Would it be the same type of attack? Like it's I don't know how to word this, but if they've gone after the systems. You said that there'd be a different concern, of course, if they'd gone after the information, the data, and threatened to publish it. So we're still trying to nail down details of the exact threat here. But do different actors work on these different types of attacks, or?
I mean, I think they'll take whatever they can get, and they can still do kind of like their extortion type of scheme.
Is it more
regardless.
sophisticated to go after the data, or is it sort of the same attack?
I mean, really, any vulnerability in any system can result in an attack, right? So, and currently with a lot of those AI-based security vulnerability-seeking tools like that Claude Mythos model, for example, it's becoming more and more easy to find these vulnerabilities and both on the good side of IT and security and the bad side. So us as IT and security administrators, we're trying to use those tools to proactively guard our systems. Meanwhile, the malicious actors are using them to find vulnerabilities and exploit them.
Does it feel like a race?
It's always a race. It's constant. It's whack-a-mole all the time. You have to be on top of things. And the way things are going right now is if organizations aren't adopting using AI security technologies, they're going to fall behind.
All right, Mark, thank you very much for coming in with your expertise.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Mark Peto is a local cybersecurity expert. Shared Health says it has launched an investigation, as we've told you, to determine the nature and scope of the attack. They'll review the systems affected by it. It says no other systems appear to be affected, and we're going to reiterate some of this and hear more in our CBC News for Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's partly cloudy and 18 downtown, partly cloudy, and 12 in Brandon, cloudy, and 15 in Dauphin. One man who recently tested positive for West Nile virus says the province needs to do more to inform people there is a human case. Last week, Todd Holmes donated blood. On Friday, he got a call from Canada Blood Services that he tested positive for West Nile. Holmes says he was swarmed by mosquitoes while hiking on Hecla Island. The province's West Nile website shows as of Friday there have been mosquitoes that have tested positive, but so far no human cases.
One thing that was really disappointing that they need to improve on is I got notified on Friday that I had this. I've seen nothing in their websites indicating that I have West Nile. So people can be informed where it happened so they can be properly protected.
He says he's been suffering from a variety of symptoms, from extreme chills to crushing fatigue. Holmes says if it hadn't have been for the call from Canada Blood Services, he would have thought he had some kind of a flu virus. CBC has reached out to both the province and Canada Blood Services. Manitoba's first supervised drug consumption site opens today, starting at 11 in the morning at 366 Henry Avenue. That's the permanent spot in Winnipeg's core where people can use drugs they bring while under the supervision of trained staff. The Indigenous-led supervised consumption site will be open Tuesdays to Saturdays for nearly 8 hours a day. A ransomware attack on Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre has affected doors, heating, and cooling at Manitoba's largest hospital. Shared Health says patient safety is not affected, but the Manitoba Nurses Union says it's concerned given the number of security incidents at the hospital. Darlene Jackson is the union's president.
It's worrying for staff because if doors are not secure, then you can have individuals just walking into doors without anyone knowing they're in the building.
The hospital told staff in a memo it's placed more security at entrances. Critics of Manitoba Hydro's plans to burn more fossil fuels have some fuel of their own from the Crown Corporation. During public hearings late last month, Hydro officials testified their Brandon natural gas plant had to run below capacity during 3 out of the past 10 winter peak use periods. Hydro plans to spend $3 billion to expand this plant. James Wilt with the Manitoba Climate Action Team says the testimony contradicts previous hydro claims. Cleaner energy is too unreliable in the winter.
Up until now, Hydro has been quite protective of this sort of information. There's been a lot of reports over the months and years that questions the wintertime reliability of gas plants across North America, including Alberta, where there's been significant outages, but we haven't really seen this kind of information until now.
Hydro officials say the existing Brandon plant requires maintenance and the expansion will be more reliable. Manitoba's Columbian community is supporting each other in the wake of a devastating earthquake in their home country. Early Monday morning, an earthquake rocked Western Colombia and neighboring countries. At least 130 people have been killed. Cruz Woloski is president of the Columbian Alliance in Manitoba. She says she and others are texting each other, seeing if everyone's okay or if they need help tracking down family or friends. Woloski says while Canada is home, Colombia is close to their hearts.
When we're far away, we miss a lot of things. This is our home now. But it's to know that something happened and we're not there to be with our family immediately. It's what it shocks us when those things happen.
There are more than 1,500 people in Manitoba's Columbian community. And finally, a Winnipeg dog advocate says she's seeing more people surrender dogs for cost-related reasons than ever before. Carla Martinelli-Irvin says the Winnipeg Pet Rescue Shelter has seen 200 such cases this year. She says a majority of the time it's because owners can't afford their vet care.
There's a lot of good people that have to give up their animals due to costs, and I want to stress that. They're not all people that are just kind of, there you go, don't want to see them again. It's a lot of good people that due to cost are having to relinquish their pets.
Last month, the Winnipeg Humane Society also saw 150 owner surrenders. It says the majority of those were because of pet care costs. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 9 o'clock.
All right, thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Your next local CBC program after InfoRad is Radio Noon, and today on the province-wide call-in, we've all been there at some point. You're listening to the radio, having a good morning, all of a sudden, someone cuts you off, and you're mad. You're thinking, who teaches these people how to drive? On today's call-in, road rage. Your stories about maybe when road rage got the best of you, or if you found yourself on the other side of it. What happened? Call or text to join the conversation. That is road rage on the provincial-wide call-in, starts at 12:15. Well, no rage in thanking the people that worked on the show today. Associate producers, Kaylin Monkman, Corey Funk, and Emily Enns. Reporter Jim Agapito. Nellie Gonzalez is the producer of our CA programs. Leif Larson is a senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. As well from our news department, Josh Crabb, Megan Ketchison, and Cameron McLean. Thanks, everybody, for your work. And our Studio 15 crew, Darren Marash, Jenica Sewell, and Mr. Abby Adiemi, who's going to have the last word.
Yeah, we're looking at a lot of sunshine outside. We'll see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later as the clouds roll in. There's a good chance of showers in most of the regions. For the southern regions today, we'll see highs near 24 degrees, while up north we will see highs. Currently, temperatures near 15. We'll get to 18 up north with showers and thunderstorms in the forecast. Winnipeg, we are looking at 18 today, right now. We will get to 25 later, and watch out for those constructions. They're like all over the place.
All right, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
The Current's coming up next right here on CBC 89.3 FM. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa.